These are the hawks that we, along with our audience, will be watching.
Welcome back to the Kaiser Report. I'm Max Kaiser. Time now to turn to Kaiser Report favorite, Randy Voller, four-time mayor of Pittsboro in North Carolina, former chairman of the North Carolina Democratic Party. Randy, welcome back.
Good to be back, Max.
All right, we like to take the pulse of politics in America with someone like yourself who's been steeped in Democratic politics for the most part for many years. Now let's talk about three signature Obama policies still playing out under Trump. Obamacare, banking, and foreign policy. So first on Obamacare, the premiums in North Carolina were up 44% last year. This year, my premium is up 24%. Many Democrats are fighting tooth and nail to preserve this system. Why is that?
Well, because if you eliminated the system, we'd have an awful lot of people that wouldn't have coverage, or their coverage would be too expensive. So I think that this is essentially the worst of all worlds. It's what happens when you don't get a General Assembly that endorses the programs by taking the money from the federal government when they could have. And they have not actually tried to make this work. Again, when I've been on the show before, I'm for the public option. I was for a more complete system for universal health care. And this is something we predicted would happen. And of course, right now, Bernie Sanders and others have signed on to going toward universal health care right now in DC.
Right. This idea that we're helping people who wouldn't ordinarily get health care, getting them health care, it falls apart for a few reasons. In my case, I'm paying close to $13,000 now a year in health care. I got a $7,000 deductible, and I spent maybe $400 last year on health care. I'm never going to make the deductible, so I'm never going to actually participate in the scheme. And I want to touch.
But you wouldn't pay that under universal health care.
But we're not at universal health care. But just by saying that we hope to have universal health care doesn't mean we're anywhere near universal health care. In the meantime, we're experiencing what you call crypto-fascism, which is more to the point. The healthcare industry are fascists. They have aligned with elements in government and corporations to loot. I'm being looted. I'm not offering any kind of a service. I'm being looted by fascists in America. You call crypto-fascism, and we don't have universal health care. And it's not unlike what happened in previous countries when corporations and government got together to loot the population, right?
Well, look, my father-in-law is a retired trauma surgeon, and when he got finished practicing in New York, he went up to Vermont. He was a pretty much standard issue conservative. He's come to love and respect Bernie Sanders. And in his ripe old age, the good Dr. Russell, he sees major problems with the healthcare system. And of course, he left the system because of it going to the HMOs, because going to the situation where you have a middleman between you and your doctor. I mean, really what we need is a family doctor for everyone. This is an imperfect system. We've tried to fix it, and we can't get serious policy move forward in Washington. It's not really serious to repeal it and replace it. Replace it with what?
Yeah, but
and it's not. And I agree with you. The system right now is flawed. But in the district we live in, Mark Walker's congressional district, if we were to pull the plug, well over 100,000 people would be adversely affected. So we have a situation where I guess you're correct, Max.
Yeah.
Those that are financially benefiting from this have people where they want them in a non-competitive market. I mean, the other aspect of this is we're not reforming tax policy where you have these catalog health plans that allow people to actually, a business, to treat it differently when they're paying for it, right? It should be a form of compensation.
Look,
So, I mean, there's a lot of policies that have to move in order to fix what's wrong with our healthcare system.
but you can't look at the healthcare in a vacuum because, again, if your objective is to help people who can't get healthcare, helping let's say the underprivileged in America, then you wouldn't have the industrial prison state. You wouldn't have cops in refining the asset forfeiture law to allow cops to steal money from people with no accountability whatsoever. You wouldn't have education costs skyrocketing. You wouldn't have transportation costs skyrocketing. We just revisited the Standing Rock Reservation in North Dakota, and it's an open prison where once you step off the reservation, cops stop you and they shake you down for money, and everybody knows it. Now that's crypto-fascism, that's fascism. So that's the bigger problem. You know, we have a problem of fascism in America, not a bad healthcare policy. And when liberals in the left who are crying about a few people that are getting healthcare that wouldn't normally get healthcare are ignoring the fact that these people are being harassed by cops, they're being raped in Hollywood, and they're being thrown in jail by the prison industrial state. Now, when are we going to address the fascism problem in America, Randy? You're a politician, you know the score. When are we going to stop fascism?
When we actually start getting money out of politics. I mean, here's the bigger question. If you're a member of Congress, why don't you just change the law so you don't have to spend all day dialing for dollars and having to talk to these people and take money from them? Why don't you just change the system so you can actually make good policies that are effective and benefit all Americans?
Yeah,
I mean,
okay, well,
the root of what you're saying is actually is kind of a crony capitalist state, or people actually taking advantage of others for dollars. I mean, the reason I believe that members of Congress don't change it is that they feel like they're either stuck in the system they have and or they enjoy the access. Like I now have access to these wealthy people. They make me feel like I'm very important, and therefore I don't want to, change the way the game is played now. I'm a VIP. But if you really want to change it for the American people, Max, we've got to get rid of Citizens United and change how we fund politics in this country. Simple as that.
I just filming The Great American Pilgrimage with Stephen Baldwin. It'll be airing on RT in November. And in 1773, the colonists decided in a brazen act of hostility to stage the Boston Tea Party as an act against the crown, which set the stage for the revolution. They tried every avenue to make some kind of compromise with the crown, with the monarchs. It failed. They staged a revolution. How are we not at a similar inflection point in American history where we've tried every appeasement to the fascists, to the monarchs, to the entrenched aristocracy? How are we not at yet again that point in time when we need to say enough is enough, declare independence from American fascist corporations, and restart, hit the reset button, do whatever it takes to hit the reset button and to save democracy, or live like slaves to the corporate fascist, Randy? That's what I'm saying. When are we going to man up?
Well, when people stop actually saying that corporations are people. I mean, that's a perversion of the 14th Amendment. It was argued vociferously after the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment were passed, after a very significant inflection point, the Civil War. And it was corporate interests that argued that case that got corporations the rights of people. They shouldn't have the rights of you and I. For one thing, they can live on forever as long as they don't go bankrupt and dissolve. You and I can't. So we all know that they're not people. They can't love. They can't feel pain the way we do. They can't have children. They can't enjoy this beautiful day. Yet, in a perversion of the 14th Amendment, they are actually allowed personhood. And so if you take the personhood issue and connect it with the Citizens United issue, this is a key reason why we have the problems in our country, and why I agree with you. We probably are at an inflection point. At some point, the people are going to realize that, yes, they're being looted, and it's not something that's a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. It's an issue of certain elements in our society that have decided that they don't respect the masses, and all they think of them as consumers and folks that we can take from.
So in other words, Rachel Maddow at MSNBC, she can't really criticize corporate fascists in America, because under the Personhood 14th Amendment that you're talking about, they can claim that they're being discriminated against and their feelings are being hurt.
Well, I mean, it gives them the rights to privacy. So you see in some of these cases where corporations do things that are deleterious to the public good, to the commons, they come in and say, we have the same rights as Max Kaiser, so you can't have unreasonable search and seizure, or we have our own rights under the First Amendment as if you as a person.
Right, they have the right under the freedom of speech and personhood rights to be a fascist, because they identify as fascists, and it would be politically incorrect to call them out, take them into the public square, and deal with them as historically fascists have been dealt with. Now, let me move on to
we could go on a whole show about that.
Yeah, let's go move on to Barack Obama. His Department of Justice allowed the big banks to get away with mortgage fraud crime. A new investigation from The Nation magazine reveals that J.P. Morgan defrauded the Department of Justice by writing off loans they no longer actually owned. When does this crime wave stop? So in other words, J.P. Morgan, they wrote off loans. They got a huge economic benefit on loans that didn't exist, essentially phantom loans. Jamie Dimon just plucked nonsense out of the air, said it was worth something, committing massive fraud. He's a serial fraudster. He's a financial terrorist, as we've said over and over again. He's a corporate fascist, and yet he has protection under this personhood agreement. So when does the crime wave stop? When, Democrats, I guess, the Democrats are, here's a great issue to gain some political traction, going after fascism. Isn't that a crowd pleaser? Stop fascism in America. Isn't that a crowd pleaser? Isn't that a good idea?
Well, look, in the past, actually, we have had the backbone to do these investigations. We did it in 1913. There were the Peugeot hearings. We did it in the early 30s. In 1934, there was a fairly famous prosecutor, and Congress actually got to the bottom of this. For some reason, we have decided to give, white-collar criminals a pass. And, that's one of the failures, I think, of the Obama administration, is that they didn't, prosecute the folks that essentially perpetrated this fraud on the American people, which was the 2008 meltdown. Now, let's not forget, though, that at the end of the Bush administration, when they came up with the bailout, from what I understand, and you probably heard the same thing, they all went into a room, our Treasury Secretary and a lot of folks that had connections to very powerful firms like Goldman Sachs, and they came up with a very simple agreement, almost written on the back of a napkin, a 3-page agreement to distribute $787 billion, or, give or take a few billion. And I thought, my God, the average consumer that goes in there to try to put down money and buy a house now has to go through a pretty rigorous process and practically sign away their life to actually get a loan on a house. And yet these guys are getting hundreds of billions of dollars that are eventually being paid for by the American people on agreements that are 2 and 3 pages long, right? Just basically a handshake agreement, and like, we're all going to take care of ourselves. We're in here with the leaders of the New York Fed. We're in here with the banks, with the investment banks, et cetera, et cetera. To me, that was a failure. And I hope that if we get a changeover in congressional leadership, either the Republicans get a backbone or the American people put in Democrats, that we actually get real investigations in Congress instead of these show trials that mean nothing.
That's about it. That's the time. We're done with time, Randy. But as always, fascinating. Thanks for being on the Kaiser Report.
Thank you, Max.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Kaiser Report with me, Max Kaiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Randy Voller, here in North Carolina. If you want to reach us on Twitter, it's Kaiser Report. Until next time, bye, yo.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody's in for a fun time tonight, because tonight's topic is corporatocracy and corporate personhood. And we're going to be discussing that at the round table tonight with, I'm hoping to get my guests in, Brenda Stettner, Rolf Hartloff, Rand, and Duke Willis, and Christopher James. I guess I'm the first one in. Oh, there he is, Mr. Duke Willis.
Hi, Doug. How are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you. Who else do we have? Oh, there he is, Rolf Hartloff and Christopher James. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming on board. And we have Brenda Stettner, but now are you on the Antarctic, Brenda? Are you up on the bottom end of the Earth globe?
Apparently so.
You seem to be upside down. coming to us from Antarctica. Oh, there she goes.
Better.
One more. Another.
One more twist.
One more twist. There you go. She has landed in the northern hemisphere.
Never know with this camera what's happening.
Oh, there you go. So how are we all this evening, gentlemen, ladies?
Good. Glad to be here.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
Yep, good.
I'll go ahead and introduce everybody. Everybody knows Duke Willis up here at the top hat on. Rolf Hartloff is beside him. Brenda Stettner from So Saskatchewan is just underneath myself and Duke, and we have Mr. Christopher James underneath Mr. Hartloff and Duke Willis down on the bottom there.
Hello.
And so tonight's topic of all things is going to be corporatocracy and corporate personhood. And so I thought we would start off this evening with a couple of definitions, just so that the people know what corporatocracy is and what corporate personhood is, so that we don't lose them coming out of the gate. So if I can get Ed to put up the definitions on the screen, and I'll go through them for the listening audience. Ed? And you guys, if you don't mind, would you mind muting your mics right now? I'm going to do about a 15-minute intro here. And then I'm going to open up the table to discussion. How's that? Perfect. So Ed, can you bring up the definitions for me? The first one would be corporatocracy, so that the people can see what we're talking about here. So, and I'll read it out as we go, as we scroll down. So corporatocracy is a society or a system that is governed or controlled by corporations. And as we scroll down a little bit more, corporatocracy, rule by corporations. Now this is a corporatocracy, not to be confused with corporatism, is a term used as an economic and political system controlled by corporations or corporate interests. Economist Jeffrey Sachs described the United States as a corporatocracy in his book, The Price of Civilization. He suggested that it arose from four trends: weak national parties and strong political representations of individual districts, the large U.S. military establishment after World War II, and big corporate money financing election campaigns, and globalization tilting the balance away from the workers. The term was used by author John Perkins in his 2004 book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, where he described corporatocracy as a collective composed of corporations, banks, and governments, that this collective is known as what Arthur C. Wright Mills would call the power elite. The power elite are wealthy individuals who hold prominent positions in corporatocracies. These individuals control the process of determining society's economic and political policies. And then we'll go down for the third definition, which is rule by an oligarchy of corporate parasites through the manipulation of a formal democracy. After the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United case, the movement of the U.S. towards a corporatocracy is complete. And we'll be looking at the Citizens United case here in just a couple of minutes. Now, this is the definition for corporate personhood. And isn't that cute? They've changed it to a juristic person and a body recognized by the law as being entitled to corporate and or entitled to rights and duties in the same way as a natural person, the common example being a company, hence corporate personhood. Now, I'm going to go and I'm going to read a little bit of history for you guys, just to get you to where we need to be on corporatocracy itself, or I'm sorry, corporate personhood itself. So it came from the doctrine of corporate personhood is based on a legally meaningless obiter dictum, or offhand remark, made by Chief Justice Morrison Remick wait before the decision was read in the Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railway, 1886. It was not the decision, it was not part of the decision, but it subsequently found its way into the court reporter's summary of the case. Just 3 years later, in Minneapolis and St. Louis Railway versus Beckwith in 1889, Justice Stephen Field cited Santa Clara as precedent, giving it the force of law when the court ruled that the corporation is a person, for both due process and equal protection under the 14th Amendment. But Justice Field knew that he was lying as he cited the obiter dictum that corporations were persons for the purpose of the 14th Amendment, because he was there when Justice Waite made the offhand remark. Nevertheless, this fallacious precedent is still cited as if it were law of the land. So that's how corporate personhood came into being. Now, I'm going to read a couple of statements by a gentleman from the 1930s called Thurman Arnold. And he wrote a book called Folklore of Capitalism. And in it, he saw that the effect of corporate personhood and stated that the idea that a corporation is endowed with the rights and prerogatives of free individual is as essential to the acceptance of corporate rule in temporal affairs as was the ideal of divine right of kings in an earlier day. He also pointed out institutions once formed have the persistency of all living things. They tend to grow and expand even when their utility both to the public and their own members has disappeared. They still survive. His prediction is accurate for our present day. As soon as legal right was established to use corporate money to control the political system, the contest between capitalism and democracy had been at a predetermined outcome. So there you see what we're going to be looking at a little more in depth this evening. Now, I'm going to take a look at two cases, and if I can get Ed to bring up the first one, which was Citizens United. Ed, if we could just bring up the first page on Citizens United. I've highlighted a couple of things there. Nope, that's the Canadian one. We'll get to the Canadian one after these first two. So it's Citizens United we're looking for, Ed. There it comes. Nope, same one you just had. That's okay. It's the new year and Ed's still getting used to this. You find it, Ed? Okay. Nope, that's the second one. You'll get here eventually. This case was decided in 2010, and here we go. And if you scroll down to the second paragraph, no, there we go, the one in yellow. It says, the Citizens United ruling released in January of 2010 tossed out the corporate and union ban on making independent expenditures and financing electioneering communications. It gave corporations and unions the green light to spend unlimited sums on ads and other political tools calling for the election or the defeat of an individual candidate. And that's it. This is in the United States. Now, this basically was the final nail in the coffin for creating the corporatocracy that is now the United States of America. We also have similar rulings here in Canada, which I'll get to, but I want to show you something here first. The next one I want to talk to you about very quickly, just to give you an idea of how corporatocracy works. If we can go to the next panel, which is OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma. Ed, I want to show the people just how corporatocracy works. You had it up just before you put this last one up. So it was the one you put up before you put up the Citizens United, just to help you.
Excuse me, folks, but somehow I closed it out. Give me a minute and I'll bring it back up when I can.
Thank you.
It's going to take a minute, Doug.
Okay. Basically, I'll give you a little thumbnail while he's doing this. The OxyContin maker, OxyContin, as you know, is a morphine, and I think it's morphine and Tylenol, and it's one of the most addictive painkillers out there on the market. Actually, these guys promoted it through doctors' offices. They give doctors kickbacks. The more they prescribe, the more they make, and so forth. Well, they wound up going into a massive lawsuit. Now, the family got multiple billions of dollars from this, and they're a billionaire family. And so what happened was, when they were losing these lawsuits, because basically, here we go. Basically, they had 2,600 lawsuits alleging the company helped fuel the deadly U.S. Opioid epidemic. Purdue's board met on Sunday evening to approve the long-expected bankruptcy filing which the company is pursuing to restructure under terms of a proposal to settle the widespread litigation. Okay. Now, the company is responsible, but the people who own the company got to keep their billions, while the company, which was gutted by these people, had to deal with the lawsuit and paying out these people literally pennies on the dollar. And that's because of corporate personhood and the corporatocracy that we have here, that took away our right as we the people to govern the charter of corporations. And I want to now show you the Supreme Court of Canada, which this now deals with Canada. Those examples were from the United States. Where did corporate personhood start? Well, it started at 1886, Southern Pacific Railway versus Santa Clara County. And that's where it all started, in the corporate personhood, which was the final nail needed in the coffin to bring in corporatocracy. So if Ed could bring up the Canadian corporate rights and Canada's Supreme Court, I'd just like to read a quick little bit here, because we in Canada have a different approach to corporate personhood. And so, Ed, and then so here we go. It says the tobacco companies had argued that the law limiting advertising infringed on their right of freedom and expression under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The court, in a unanimous decision, agreed, but went on to argue that such restrictions is unconstitutional and valid under Section 1 of the Charter. The section states that the rights set out in the Charter are not unconditional, but are guaranteed subject to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. Given the demonstrable health risks posed by tobacco, the court said that government is justified in this case in restricting the freedom of expression. Okay. But the court's assertion that corporations have the right to protections offered by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was explicit and forthright. The judgment cites as a precedent 89 case brought before it by the Irwin Toy Company challenging the constitutionality of the Quebec law that prohibited all advertising aimed at children under the age of 13. So the reality was that, yes, they found that because cigarettes were hazardous to the health, they could restrict the tobacco company. But in doing that, they also opened the door to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and allowed corporate personhood to take a firm foothold here in Canada. And so tonight, the roundtable is we're going to go and talk about this that's happening right now in front of us here in Canada. Thank you, Ed. You can put that down, and people, you can open your mics. I know that Brenda had a really interesting read this last week on a little book called Unequal Protection.
It was interesting. I'm going back and reading through my notes on it. Initially, when I started in this movement, it was because I believed in it, and I still do. But the more I'm finding out is the more of a mushroom I am. I'm at the point now where what really is real, and I just find that I have no faith in this government or the law system whatsoever. It just feels like a cloud, and what's real and what's not real anymore. It's crazy.
Well, and here's something that's interesting, Christopher. If you wouldn't mind picking up the slack here and kind of bringing in what you have discovered with the court systems and the courthouses, etc. We had a great chat last night on Duke Willis's show, and this is why I thought it was very important to bring Christopher on to tonight's show. So, Christopher, it's your microphone. Actually, you have to unmute. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here tonight, Doug. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you're coming through, Mike. Good,
Yeah.
Christopher.
Terrific. Thank you. I just first want to say thank you for having me here this evening. Secondly, Doug, as I said to you last night on our communication where we had a wonderful talk, that I'm not the smartest fellow in the world. And I got to be, I really cut to the chase with things with people. And ultimately, from the beginning of this show as it started here, my head hurts. Okay, it really hurts from listening to an enormous amount of very big words and exclamations about a corporation. It'd be like if it was Coca-Cola, for example. We're discussing a corporation's history, how it came to evolve in this country. We're not talking about a government that was created by we or for the people. So I know when we're talking about this, I can't even pronounce the definition you said, the corporate talk. I don't even know what you said. Personhood. I mean, if I could just say it simply like this, when I would speak to people, this is where I come from the court system, and everything I've learned is how to simplify everything, because how you speak and the words you use are very powerful. And I speak in the here and now. I don't speak in the past of paperwork that has nothing to do with me. Unless your name's on there as a contract, it never has anything to do with us. So when I would speak to someone on this point, knowing meeting Doug and speaking to him last night, I know where he wishes, where everybody wishes to go in this world, as the lovely woman before me was speaking, that herself, her head hurts so much she doesn't know where this is going to go. So I would simply say to people like this, how you get everybody where you want to go. And it's really how I would start it out. I would simply say to people, would you like to know a fact? Most people say yes. And you say, of an unlawful conversion that happened to you. So we're not talking about fiction now. We're not talking about corporations. We're not talking about all this literature, all this history that all of us have studied. We're simply talking about an unlawful conversion that happened to everybody when we were born. That's where this discussion has to begin, because once you answer that and people see that, everything that all of you are incredibly doing here to bring in this correct, whether it's a constitution, whatever type of documentation we as a great country are going to put together, it's being done from the correct level of consciousness, that everybody understands it came from a correct perception, foundation, that we are all a man or a woman. So that's how I would word it to people. And when you talk about, I would simply say to people, do you care what Coca-Cola, a corporation, its history is? Well, some people might be interested in it, but do you care about its own And say Coca-Cola has its own private court system. Would you care about Coca-Cola and their private court systems? I wouldn't give a rat's, I'll keep it clean here, arse, what they do. And yet, we are talking here and we're analyzing what? You're analyzing a corporation, Canada. You're analyzing its history and how it evolved. And I say to people, I don't care. That's got nothing to do with me. We all know what the problem is here, and the solution isn't looking at what they have done and trying to somehow mirror that and create something from that. But as I said to Doug last night, as I'll say lastly here, is that it's a double-edged sword, because over the history of our entire life, what this system, these people that put this together have done is they've tipped their hat to us. They've tipped their hat to the world of all these core components that we need: financial, fire, first responders, militaries, technology. We have all this infrastructure in place. So it's a double-edged sword from them. But what they've done is they've corrupted the consciousness of every man and woman in that position that they hold, right? That you're going to work in every day. It's all based on a fraud, and that happened when we were born. And that's why, Doug, I say to everybody, all this effort, I understand now where Doug and what this wonderful movement wants to do. I understand all the wrong and harm that's happening with the farmers, especially in this country, having their property stolen. The way that you get from point A to point B to solve it is you have to know who you are first. And I've learned this through hard knocks for 20 years through the courts. And I kept getting punched down, knocked down. I kept getting up. Now I've learned. Now I've got them. When you have chief justices that can't respond to you, and you're putting things properly to them in a very simple question, so everyone knows here, as I said to Doug last night, I'll give you a real gem right here. All you need to know about the court system is do the rules of civil procedure apply to a man or a woman? Show me where that applies to us. It doesn't. It's written by a private society to which you and I do not belong to. So when that happens, and you understand that, that's the game changer. Because it doesn't matter then what the CRA, with the Service Corporation Canada, with the Service Corporation Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Vancouver is doing at this particular time. You don't have any contract with those people. It doesn't matter to you. And you need to understand, that's when you understand who you are from the birth certificate, it makes it so simple, Doug. And so that's how I would bring it up to everybody. And I didn't want to talk too much, but it's that simple. I talk in the here and now. And if you talk about a corporation, Canada, and all its history, I mean, look at all that, the definitions and stuff. I don't care what's in Coca-Cola's courts. I don't care what the history of Coca-Cola was. And that's all I'm just saying. So that's my take on it, Doug. Okay.
But here's where you found your feet. It took you 20 years of doing this research. And you did go back in time and you did do the research and you did get some history underneath your belt in order to get yourself to where you are today. Yeah. And we've got to look at this. The people that we're talking to today don't have that background that you have, that you spent 20 years focusing on. So we're trying to lay in a foundation of knowledge for them. And one way to do that is to give them some history. Right. And that way they get an understanding of, oh, that's what's happened. Oh, but now what can we do to change it? And I always teach people, like you're trying to say here, you got to know where you start from. I always ask people, you got to know where your feet are before you start the journey. And without having that knowledge of knowing where your feet are, how can you start a journey? How can you create a constitution for the people, by the people, if you don't understand what has happened to you and what could happen to you by not having this knowledge?
Exactly.
You could fall right back into the same traps again without having this foundational knowledge. And like I say to you, Christopher, you didn't start off with knowing where your feet are. That was a journey of discovery, as it was a journey of discovery for myself. Yeah. And here we are today, and I'm so wonderful to have you as part of this roundtable, because now the people can actually understand, because you give it to them in a wonderful, palatable way of doing it, where I'm a little more big-worded guy. And so, but you're saying exactly what I'm saying, Christopher, exactly. They got to have knowledge, and the only way they're going to get it is to, A, do the research themselves, or watch our videos. I'm going to open it up to Brenda, Christopher, Rolf, anybody, please.
I just want to interject very quickly on what both you and Christopher are talking about here. And I can't help but think about people like my grandfather and all the old old timers that I knew when I was growing up, and they all taught me the same thing. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you're coming from. And Christopher is doing the same. He's teaching people where you're coming from right now in this fictitious existence. And Doug is telling you the same thing about our country. Christopher is explaining it to you on a man and woman basis, and Doug is telling you, here's where the problem started. It started with our entire government corporatocracy. I have a problem with that word. That turned you into a corporation because they can't deal with you, the man and woman. As a corporation, our so-called government can only deal with other corporations. And what Christopher is showing you is how they, the corporations, have converted you, the man and woman, into a corporation. And tonight we're going to talk about how they've taken a corporation and turned it into tried to turn it into the same as a man and a woman. And one of the things I'm going to hammer Doug with tonight, and many of the people here tonight, does a corporation have creator-given rights? That's what I want to know. If corporations have personhood, do they also have creator-given rights? Rolf?
No, to the best of my knowledge, I've been involved in corporations most of my life. I've had a couple of my own in the past. Corporatocracy was created a long time ago, like you said, in the 1800s. Adolf Hitler used it very successfully with the Nazi Party. A marriage between corporation and government is National Socialism. No, under God's law, I don't believe that corporations have a right to, being natural persons. I believe the limitation comes when they form a limited company. Even that, I'm not too happy with, because they should be made accountable for any damage that they do to people, to the land, to the resources, or anything else. That's my point.
Oh, we don't want any dead airspace here. My God, you didn't pick up the slack.
I have two words that I know are going to trigger Christopher, and I've heard them used twice so far tonight. One in print, and Rolf just used them again. Christopher, I'm going to throw these two words at you. You pick it up and run with natural person.
Yeah.
The oxymoron.
Walk outside to the garden, Christopher. Show me your crop of natural persons out in your garden.
Well, if I can first get back to your question, Duke, could you repeat it again for the audience? The first question that you had, not this one, the first one that the other gentleman, Rolf, was speaking to.
Oh, I didn't write that down, and now I've forgotten. Oh, do corporations have creator-given rights? I don't use the word God-given right.
That's fine.
Given rights, which are the basic principles that set us apart from animals.
Okay, so the question was again, just frame the question for me again.
Corporations have creator-given rights.
Okay, so what I teach people is that, which I've learned from many other people, incredible people before me, is that there's three powerful words you need to understand and master them. One is property, two is trespass. The third one, this is what I've developed, is the word who. So Duke's question was, the corporation, I can't remember what he said, but the bottom line, the first thing I would say to you, Duke, is, who is this man or woman called a corporation? Bring them forward. See, if a man or woman's not going to come forward that Duke's talking about, then why do I care what Duke's talking about? It's some fiction nonsense. See how simple that is? So you always ask, especially when you can swing it right over to the court system, now the crown courts, right? When there's a plaintiff, that's the other side that's moving against a defendant, somebody had to create that document, which is called a plaint. Okay, it was plaintiff by the lawyer. Well, he doesn't have firsthand knowledge. It's all hearsay. So how you shut that system down is you simply go to the other side. We just talked about how I can swing it over from the question, frame it that Duke just gave me, to now put it into real world terms, is now you look across the court and you say, who is this man or woman called the CRA? Who is this man or woman called RV? Again, when you see the all capital names, which I'm sure people have learned enough about on this show, those are corporations. It's always two corporations that are going into their court systems. Even though you see your name, doesn't matter if it's in Jello, if it's in hieroglyphics, if it's in upper and lower case, if it's an all caps letter, I don't care. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you had nothing to do with the creation of that document, it doesn't apply to you. So that's how you address it in their court system. Simply, you require that man or woman, like I just asked Duke. Who's this corporation? Before we go into further what you're claiming that this corporation has rights and something to do, well, that's an action that's required. Only a man or a woman can have rights. So why are you talking about a corporation can have rights? I realize you're framing it because this is what the legal system has taught everybody, but this is how quickly I tear it down. I simply say, who's the man or woman you're talking about, Duke? So we understand who's the man or woman. I'm going to understand what's going on here. But you're talking about a fiction. So I don't care about the other stuff. It's irrelevant. And that's how it applies in court, because you require that man or woman to always come forward, whether they're pressing the record in open court. That's why, you can shut the CRA down before they can render a verdict. Everyone needs to understand you have a right to bear witness to who's ever moving that court against you. So you require, which is a nice way of saying demand, the plaintiff to press the record. You put that in writing in their court to the judge and everybody, and you make sure you got an audience there. And what will happen is that means if it says the CRA versus Duke Willis, which is the all caps name, it's two corporations, hopefully you've already addressed it before you've even got to court. You've told them you're after something that was created. You're not looking for the creator here. You're after something that the Service Corporation Ontario and Canada created. That's the birth certificate. And you use that as evidence. There it is right here. So you require on the other side for the plaintiff to press the record. That means he has to appear, the corporation, like Duke's talking about, the man or woman, and speak in open court. Well, there's no man or woman called the CRA, people.
I hold right? Support Christopher here. I hold as case in point the removal of traffic cameras in Ontario. Originally, they're back now, but originally they were removed. Why? Because one person in Ontario stood up and said, I'm legally allowed to face my accuser. Where is my accuser? It's a machine mounted on a pole. I am legally allowed to face my accuser. You can't present my accuser. There's no charges. And cameras were taken out of intersections in Ontario. They've changed the rules and they've started putting them back in.
Just remember that
that's what I wanted to get to with Christopher here, is that
ladies and gentlemen in the audience, please understand that what Christopher is telling you is common law. And when you talk about creating common law as law of the land within your constitutions, this is exactly how your courts will be run. They will have no victimless crimes. The only way that you can be dragged into court is if somebody actually lodges a case against you and there is a victim on the other side. If you beat the crap out of somebody and wind up in the hospital, they can drag you into court because you've caused them harm. If you've stolen their property, if you've infringed upon their unalienable rights. This is what we talk about when we talk about common law, and this is how common law works. Now, I understand that John and Neil have entered the roundtable from Edmonton, Alberta, at their Constitutional Committee meeting this evening. And I thought that John might like to say a few words to our audience and to the panel, and possibly bring up people to do a quick Q&A for the next 15, 20 minutes.
Yes, thank you for the big welcome and the first ever in Alberta's history Constitutional Convention Committee. Our numbers are kind of small tonight, but it's good that people are getting together. We're doing more of a personalized meet and greet where we can walk around and introduce ourselves and talk and just kind of see what we've all got in common and how we're going to move forward with this solution, which is writing our own constitution. I got in trouble earlier for having ambient noise in my My computer mic is picking up, so bear with me if it's not acceptable audio. But for now, it's going to have to do. We were just finished watching one of Doug's videos about the history of our country and what's happened, and we've kind of shown a few people tonight what's really happened in history. And quite frankly, if we do these meetings and only one person learns, that's mission accomplished to me, because that's one more person than we had a day ago, you know. So things are moving forward. It's kind of quiet, very personal. It's nice. Wish you all could be here with us. Everyone's quite excited to get on this and do some Q&A. I'm not sure.
We are right there with you, John, right now in the roundtable. So bring your people forward, and I'm sure between the five of us, we could answer pretty much any question that you could throw at us.
Let me just ask the audience, who's got a question? Who's got a question? Anybody have a question? Any questions, Tony? Come on up and sit down. What you were talking about in the British North American Act, where it states the Queen, that refers to Queen Victoria. Is that written in the BNA? Is that documented in the BNA Act itself?
Yeah, if they scroll right down to the very bottom of the British North American Act and look up Schedule 5, it says right there in Schedule 5 that you swear allegiance to Queen Victoria. Seeing that the Section 2 of the British North American Act was removed, there are no heirs and successors, then Queen Victoria is the only one you would have sworn allegiance to. Now she's dead and gone. The British North American Act died in 1901 on January 22nd with her.
He is satisfied with your answer.
I'm sorry?
He is satisfied with your answer. Yeah, okay. Nice guy.
And
nice guy.
The nice thing about that was it was Brenda Stettner who pointed that out to me about 2 weeks ago. She asked about Schedule 5, and I said I didn't know what she was talking about because I hadn't looked at it so long. And she says, no, got to scroll all the way down. Look, Doug. And sure enough, there it was. Thank you, Brenda. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, please, let's continue on with what we were doing. I'm sure John will be able to come back in with another question.
Yeah. We have another one.
Okay.
And the question was, how do you prevent somebody who's well educated on this matter from supporting a political party?
Take him out behind the building and hit him over the head with a baseball bat. That'll fix him. No, I'm kidding. At the end of the day, does it? At the end of the day, does it really matter? It's the will of the people that are going to write the Constitution, and if they don't want political parties in the Constitution, it doesn't matter. But what one individual believes, it's got to be the will of the people, and that's all there is to that. And with enough education, I'm going to use Christopher as with enough education where people will finally find themselves as men and women, because that's so vital important. I don't think that when they sit down to write the Constitution, I don't think they're going to have much of a problem once people learn to find themselves. And the way Christopher actually teaches how that's done, it's a really short trip. It's not some long and drawn out year in, year out. Like Christopher had to go through that. But at the end of the day, once he discovered it and discovered just how short of a trip it was, it's much, much faster today for everybody. And like I say, when people understand where the history on how it took us here, it becomes common sense that, of course, constitutional conventions and seating a de jure government through a constitution makes sense. And the other side of this, and this is what excited me so much about dealing with Christopher last night, is people can find their feet very quickly. and come from that place of knowledge of being a man or being a woman and moving that forward. And I know that John and Brenda and Neil will take this information into their committee meetings. And I'm hoping at some point, Christopher, they'll reach out to you to maybe come and live stream into their meetings for them, if you have the time and the desire to do something like that. I think that both of them, and as we build more constitutional committee meetings across Canada,
it's definitely required to get the message out. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
The message that is getting out, that's the key to all of this, right? It has to be the correct message. So when you talk about the corporatocracy that you were explaining earlier, to a guy like me, that's a big word. That requires a lot of history and knowledge. So again, you can simply say what I said, the unlawful conversion. Did you know that happened against you at birth? A corporation was created. And they're going, what? Yeah. Where's the proof of that? The birth certificate you were given. What? And then explain the birth certificate to them. They understand that. And in that very short dialogue you've just explained, simply so the common man can understand it, what you were explaining in a very university level. I guess I could say the word corporatocracy still blows me away. When you first said that tonight, Doug, I damn near choked here at home. I'm like, oh, holy crow, what the heck is that? Because I stick to simple words. For example, when you use the word trespass, okay, that's all you use in common law, because trespass covers everything. All right, it covers fraud, wrong, harm, breach of contract, whatever. It's a trespass. That's how you work it down. Pardon me, not contract. That's still a legal world, but that's part of the common law side. But when you deal with the word property, your rights are your property. Everything falls under property. You never refer to your children as children in these, crown courts that are moving forward. You refer to them as your property. You might think that's hoarse. Well, no, it's not. It's very powerful. Once you understand the power of the few words that you use, there's actually, as I mentioned to Doug, there's two types of trespasses. The other trespass is a trespass on the case. And that happens when you're at the courthouse and someone within the court system trespasses against what? Your property, because that's what your filing is. See how simple it starts to get? Everything is property. And anything that's not your property, or that somebody does to you, I shouldn't say not anything that's not your property, but anything that someone does to you against your will, your wishes, is a trespass, right? It doesn't matter what it is. And those are the only simple words you have to use in court.
Aren't you going through something? Aren't you going through something like that right now with a court that had the property of Mr. Mannery, was he, removed?
Yes, exactly. And this is like, I mean, everyone doesn't need a law education. I'm going to share everyone a nugget like I did on Duke's show last night. It boils down to one simple fact, okay? Is it a public courthouse or a private courthouse? If it's public, that means everybody has access to it, like a dance hall. If it's got multiple dance halls in it. So imagine if what Brent did, he went there to get access, and everyone behind the counter got all on record, because I record everything when I go in there. I know what I was doing months ago when I wanted to do this. I was laying all this out. I was creating the case, so I wanted to capture all the communications I usually have with the court clerks, the staff, how honorably I speak to them. There's no ill will feelings. It's a good experience. But this is foreign to them too as well, because they've been given, again, they've got their duties and obligations, and they've got a process that they have to follow internally within their court office that they're working at. Well, when a man or woman shows up and they simply need to access one of those courtrooms, and we need you to provide a court clerk, and we need you to provide you a judge, a magistrate, and a bailiff, and whoever else is required to see. And if a jury needs to be seated, well, then we work to that process as well. So when you understand the power that that's a public courthouse, then you realize that you have access to it, and it's real simple. There's no man or woman in this world that can deny you a right. Only a man or woman can have rights. Remember that, okay, everybody? Judges, prime ministers, these are all people acting in a role. And when they're acting in that fictional role, they're no longer in the capacity of a man or a woman, and they have no rights because they've got duties and obligations for the service corporation, that which they work for. See how simple it is? You start to understand that. If everybody looked at Justin Trudeau as Ronald McDonald, which really Ronald McDonald's, I think, way past him from an IQ perspective. See, I told you I'm not the sharpest marble in the bowl, so to speak, because I can't even say EQ. It's IQ. See, I did it again. Anyways, this wasn't supposed to be a comedic routine here, people, but like I said, if you can't, believe me, humor is the other thing that saved me throughout the course of my life. But at the end of the day, It's that simple, right? Know who you are, and the truth is going to set you free. And as Doug, as everybody said, I've just, through the journey I've gone on, this isn't about me. It's not about me. And the education to learn this, we've now got it down. And when Doug and I are speaking, and when all of us are speaking, we're speaking on behalf of hundreds and thousands of people that came before us. People that did the very same things that we were doing and acquiring this knowledge and sharing it with their fellow man through a different medium, different vehicle. You know, a guy riding on a horse or whatever, or say, hey, Bob, you know, at the local farm or the local pond or something, they're sharing something. Now we have the internet. Now we have this vehicle that we can connect in an incredible way. We're like a little broadcast television station here. And it's time to kick ass. Okay, because I'm done getting kicked around in these court systems. And everything I've done, when people see my writings and my communication, it's all done with love and respect. And that's ultimately the foundation why we're all here tonight. It's based on love.
Well, exactly. And the whole idea of bringing this corporatocracy to the forefront and corporate personhood to the forefront was to enlighten people as to what's been going on here in Canada and in the Western world. And that the courts aren't courts of law as we perceive them to be, common law courts. No, these are administrative offices for the corporation. And like you say, they are private, not public. And I know that Duke wants to, I'm going to let Duke bring this in because I'm going to say the word Unidroit and he's going to jump on. Okay, Duke? Oh, he's busy doing something else.
Unidroit. Oh, I just love that agreement. For those who don't know, Doug spoke about Unidroit on one of his shows with Hugh Riley. And for a long time, I've been telling people about how Unidroit is the United Nations format for corporatocracy to be implemented into a free society. And Doug will fine tune it a little bit, but in essence, it's the blueprint, it's the controlling mechanism, it's the office secretary that makes sure the criminals in Ottawa and the criminals in Washington and the criminals in London, England, all write their legislation with the right wording and make sure that they put notwithstanding clauses in all the right places, following the right paragraphs and clauses. That's what Unidroit is. And Doug introduced me to Unidroit as an example of how the provinces are all independent countries. Unidroit was an agreement that Canada signed on to in 1978 with the United Nations. But all the other independent countries, Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, BC, they all signed on independently. In fact, it was from 1978. Now I'm going memory here. Doug, maybe you can pull it up quick and refresh my memory. I think it was 2004 was the last year that British Columbia was the last of the Canadian countries to sign on to Unidroit. And Doug introduced me and other people to Unidroit as a means of demonstrating that even though the federal government signed on, all the provinces had to sign on individually because internationally they are individual countries. But Unidroit
actually,
go ahead, Brenda. Brenda, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say BC actually signed on in 2014.
2014. There you go.
2014. Quebec still hasn't signed.
Yeah, Quebec still hasn't signed on to Unidroit.
No.
Just like it hasn't signed on to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Exactly.
So, Unidroit, as much as we may not think of it as an important international agreement, It serves as demonstrating to anyone who wants to look at it that Canada as a country doesn't exist. B, it serves as an example of the corporate ideology, corporatocracy, if you will, that has been mandated, pushed, forced into our everyday existence by the corporation that is our governments. And I use plural because it's in every Manitoba, Alberta, all of them.
I just want to interject here for 1 second, and I'm going to give it right back to you. I just want to tell people what the actual UNIDROIT means. It means the UN Institution for the Unification of Private Law. Let me read that again. The UN Institution for the Unification of Private Law. Remember what Christopher said? Public courthouse. What are these guys actually operating in? Private courthouse. And they're operating under the UNIDROIT, which is the UN Institution for the Unification of Private Law. Go ahead, dude. Sorry.
You just summed it all up. And the only thing I want to add to every time Christopher talks, I want people in the back of your head to keep remembering our Charter of Rights and Freedoms calls you a person. A person is a corporation. What does Christopher call you? And what does Christopher say you have to call yourself? A man and a woman, not a person. You're not a human either. The other night, Doug and I delved into what is the Black's Law definition of a human, an animal. So the next person who stands up and says, oh, the UN gave us human rights, shove your animal rights up your, you know what? I'm a man, I'm a human.
Hang on a minute, Duke. It wasn't Blacks, it was Ballantines.
Ballantines. I knew it began with a B.
Yeah, because people will go to Blacks and go, wait a minute, it's not in there. It's actually in Ballantines, 1948 edition.
There you go.
By the way, Christopher, some of the better law dictionaries are in the first editions or in second editions that you find historically rather than in the new ones that they actually remove stuff from, but it's still applicable. They delete it out of the newer editions, but it's still applicable. And Ballantines is one of those that described human as a monster or a sub-man. And when people would go after and they go, well, I have human rights, and you're going, oh, you're a slave. Oh, how nice of you to admit that you're a slave. And yet you go, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Under the UN Charter, it says I have inalienable rights, and they've taken that word and co-opted that one as well.
What
John?
Unalienable, they changed one letter.
Yeah.
Unalienable became inalienable, and inalienable rights can be taken from you. Unalienable rights cannot be taken from you.
So John, do you have another question here for our panel? I see you looking in to the screen. You're going to have to unmute your mic.
They were wondering how to get a hold of Christopher, so I just went to the YouTube, A Warrior Calls, and showed everyone how to get a hold of him there and watch his videos and stuff.
Well, there you go. How wonderful is that? I guess, is there any further questions that they would have for us tonight? That's cool, Christopher. Okay, guys, I guess we'll get back to what we were discussing. Rolf,
I've got a comment on that. It happened at a meeting here in Regina with Brenda was chairing. One of the fellows that was a guest brought up the fact that the pronunciation is unalienable rights. Rights can be placed, liens can be placed against your rights, which take them away from you. So the God-given rights we have are unalienable rights. Does that make sense to anyone?
It absolutely does. some people pronounce them that, others pronounce them unalienable, et cetera, et cetera. But either or is fine. That they both mean exactly the same. Unalienable is more, as you would say, Christopher, I think, easier to understand for people. It's not a university professor word now.
I would just say, who claims I did wrong? Who's claiming I've caused them wrong or harm?
Correct.
Bring the man forward. That's it. That's how I look at it. You just always ask for the man or woman to appear, right? And then if pretty much you're standing there by yourself all the time, when you start saying, well, who wrote that paper? Did you write it? Well, no. Those acts, you talk about person, the word person always keeps coming up. People need to understand something, is that only a man or a woman in this world have rights. Okay? And when that person is created, that's what the birth certificate represents. As people have do a little bit of basic research in the legal world, a corporation is looked at in their private society as a person. Okay, so when you understand that distinction, that's why you don't see in any of their law books. Ask them, go to any lawyer. Say, show me in any of your precious little law books where the word man or woman appears. Doesn't appear in there, does it? And even if it did, I don't care. Did you write that book? No. Is my name on it? Was there any meeting of the minds like Dougie and Boy and I had last night? Nope. So how does that law book apply to I am man or my fellow man and woman? See, when I speak for all of man and woman. That's when I'm always speaking in a capacity of for all of us, when I'm trying to walk everybody through this conversation. And that's why it's really not so much of a learning that we all have to go through. It's a reset with our consciousness. But this is a conversation, as I said to Doug the other night, that should have happened a long time ago. Should have happened hundreds of years ago as it was passed down through the generations. But because of the people that have had control of this world for a very long time, right? And that's why you can't bog people down with it to try and take 20 years, or some people got more than me behind it, and cram that all into somebody and talking to them, it's impossible. So I just deal in the here and now, and through some very simple foundational core pieces, that public courthouse is the key to everything. It's the key to everything for all of us. That is where we correct everything that is going wrong out here within the core infrastructure that's already set up. Because if that man or woman at the Bank of Canada does not restore it back to the people, and we do not have a man, even if it is a service corporation, okay? Even if McDonald's was the ultimate service corporations providing all these services for us right across Ontario, I wouldn't care. If they were doing a great job for me, better than well, they shouldn't. If they're actually there on behalf of the people, because you would want to be honorable and do the best you could for your people. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that as Justin Trudeau's position, he's no different than the president of McDonald's. He's got a title called Prime Minister of Canada. Okay, he's the top dog on this, right? Is Justin Trudeau going to come into any public courthouse and state on the record in front of the people, point across the room to me and say, that man, there's my property? No, of course he's not. Just like Justin's not my property. Does that mean that any agent or officer underneath them are going to come into an open court and point across to me that I'm their property? No, of course they're not. So what does that leave then? Well, that leaves then that everyone in these service corporations, like McDonald's, I don't know who these people are. I wish them all the best, but nothing that they're relying on that has their paperwork processes or code, statutes, or rules apply to I am man. I have nothing to do with your corporation. You're actually supposed to be providing services to me. It's like your lawn service. They come up to you, right? And all of a sudden they've had a bad year of all this fraud and stuff they've been doing in the background, because that's ultimately what the birth certificates are, right? It's human trafficking. It's a baby slave trade. That's why we have to stop it first. And now, this is where my attention is. And I guess I need to say it every time I speak. As Doug knows, last night, there's a duality with me right now. My focus is on a case called Brent Mannery case that's in the courts right now, and it's been unlawfully removed. And this is what I'm bringing to the attention of the people. It's that simple. You don't have to understand law. You don't have to understand the Mannery case, which is very simple to understand. I want everyone to understand something. There's a public courthouse. All the public courthouses across this country are corrupt. They're not allowing we, the people, access to them. We have the evidence of it, and now they've actually removed a man's verified claim. He swore it under oath or affirmation as well before a justice of the peace, before we filed it. And it's all on record. But they wouldn't give us that audio recording of it. But it's okay. We got one anyways. We took several people in there with us, and we all managed to get a recording of it. So these are the games that they play. But I'm bringing everything fact-based forward. I'm able to flip things around really quickly, but simply because I have to talk to the common man like he understands it simply as it is. And just remember, any paperwork that anyone's reading to you, if you didn't have anything to do with the creation of it, doesn't matter if it's a constitution, UN, whatever, all the stuff people refer to in charters, it's got nothing to do with you. You are here right in the now. You were given all you are a sovereign. You have every right to live on this earth free. You're either free or you're a slave. And that is why I say it's a lifestyle in which I'm living now. It's not a fad. You have to know in your heart, soul, and mind who you are as a man and a woman. And we're going to turn this around very quickly. I know we are, because it's simple.
Well, and that's the whole idea of, if you have to go in and constantly fight for your right to live, which is what you're saying here, in their public/private court, converting their private. This is why I'm so adamant about seating a government by the people, for the people, and we don't have to go into the courts all the time to secure our rights, because we've secured our rights through a de jure government that protects them. Those courts are there. When we go to court, there will be a victim on the stand, or there will be a plaintiff on the stand, and we will be able to face our accusers or face our victim if that's the case. And with the jury of our peers, which is even, I'm sorry, I'll let you talk about the jury of your peers, because this is also of vital importance, that cases aren't put in front of a judge and the judge makes up his own freaking mind. That's disgusting.
Yeah, and that's why you need to understand the judge
jury of your peers. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry, Doug. That's why I like everyone to simply understand that, and everything I do is honorable. Don't think that I walk into these courtrooms and I'm confrontational with them. Oh no, but I'm there to argue honorably. That's a public courthouse, and you never leave that capacity once you walk into it as a man or a woman. They've set it all up to intimidate you. They've got the judge elevated, right? They wear the black robes. You can feel the energy in these buildings. Remember, corporation is dead. It's something that's dead, right? Why do you think these judges wear black? Okay, they're not the light to this world. No, they're a private society. It's demonic what is actually they're doing to their fellow man. And many of the higher ones, the justices of the peace, they don't know this stuff. Your average Joe, even the top lawyers in the crown lawyers. That's why I say to people, right? This all has to come from love first and foremost. That's the foundation of everything that I do. But you've also got to yield a very big stick. And I got a very big stick that I'm yielding here, and that's truth. Okay, and I've simplified it down for everybody. And it's what you're doing here, Doug, is absolutely, it's wonderful to see that this awakening is happening. And I know that through more discussions and more, the work that Duke is doing is incredible. And again, I'm talking with people around the world, but my focus right now is to simply get this court restored back for Brett and Kathy Mannery. I can't take on any more cases. So people understand this. I can't help you because this is the best way, believe it or not, that I'm going to help our entire country and our world. This is how we're all going to do it. We all have to shine a bright light on this case, on the courthouse, because once that claim gets put back into that courthouse, it's game on for everybody in this country. That courthouse acts as a checks and balances for we the people. We're there to support law enforcement because we have the capacity to understand a trespass, which might be defined as fraud. Why do we need to go to somebody else? If I'm standing on the street and say Duke comes up to me and we're talking for a bit, and I look at Duke and he's got there's 3 or 4 other people around, and Duke's got a watch on, and I take Duke's watch, right? And I bugger off with it and I steal it from him. Is Duke going to go to the police and go, oh, where? This man, Christopher, he took my watch on me. He ran down the street on me. No, he's not going to do that. If he's a man, he's going to report that to the police, not make a complaint. He's going to report to them that this crime has happened, this trespass, and then he's going to move a claim against that guy in a public courthouse. You drag him into a public courthouse. You go right to the public courthouse through the private prosecution side. Okay, this is something that they have in the legal world we talked about last night. So you use the private prosecution side, but in a common law capacity, right? And see, those are big words in and of itself. People go, uh-oh, here it goes, But that's why I want to dumb it down. I want you, if you go to my website I've got, it's very simply laid out so people can start to understand what the private prosecution, the legal society is doing right now in our court systems. That's supposed to be for citizens. Okay, citizens is another name, as I'm sure everyone here realizes, doesn't represent a man or a woman. You never allow them to cloak you in any other name other than a man or a woman, because when you walk into a court, I'm not going to point. Duke's not going to point across the courtroom and say that Christopher over there stole my watch. Is he? No, he's going to say that man. Identify right there, who I also know who's named Christopher. Remember, when you walk into court, your given name is your first and your middle name. That is what was given to you. But what was not given to you was the family name, the clan name. That existed long before you through generations. So when you were given your name, that's your given name. My given name was Christopher James, right? Right? Whatever they want to call me. But at the end of the day, in law, you're either a man or a woman. You've done wrong or harm to somebody, and they've got evidence, and they're going to move it into a courthouse, and the bar doesn't like it.
Christopher, will you please let the listening audience know what courthouse you'll be bringing this case back into, and hopefully people will take note of this and the time and the day that you'll be doing this, so that you can have, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred people show up.
Well, that's exactly what we want. The first thing, if I as I'm working through this process, I would like to everyone know I'm a very transparent person. What's going on here? Everything I'm doing now is out in the open. I'm demonstrating. I'm showing all my work. I'm showing all my communications. No one's going to be able. It's bulletproof. Everything that I'm laying forward here is iron concrete clad case. Okay, that everybody is simply going to be able to understand. So if you look up, which I would like you to look up, is the history of the St. Thomas Courthouse in Elgin County in Ontario here. It's actually, and see, I didn't know this, and I think this is also through the grace of God that he brought me back to this. This is one of the founding original first superior courthouses, I believe, in Ontario that was ever built. And it is absolutely a beautiful building. A beautiful building. Wonderful people work there, regardless of what they've done, because I look at my fellow man as they are children, because they've been consciously lied to. And so why am I going to get in an argument with my fellow man or woman if I know that they have not been given the foundational truth? It's not that they're not dumb. It's not that they're not, unfortunately, in the police industry, they're willfully ignorant to these truths now that have been brought forward to them. But as Doug was doing earlier, when we talk in a very big, complicated type of way, this is what has been communicated to the police all this time, right? As everyone's trying to find their way forward. And I guess I'm just the first guy to the trough. That's the way I look at it, right? I got this given to me. This weight got lifted off my shoulder. I've been carrying for about 20 years now. And now I simply understand what is going on here. And it's about pulling everybody together. I don't care what your background is, first responder, police, whatever. It's time we all come together. So that's going to happen. Where the Brent Mannery court case is going to get restored is in the St. Thomas Elgin County Courthouse. And that's a public courthouse.
Whereabouts is that exactly?
That's
I know it's here in Ontario, but I don't know where in Ontario.
You're about, I believe, about 30 minutes south of London, or pardon me, about 45 minutes south of London. 40 minutes south of London.
About 40
do we have a timeline as to when that would possibly happen, or will you be able to announce that shortly?
No, I don't. We don't have a timeline, because the thing that has to happen, the only reason this isn't getting restored is because the people in this country don't know about it. And this is what I'm just about to launch right now. We talked about my website, and I thank you again, Doug. If that gentleman works out, that would be fantastic for my website. But I got a little bit hindered before Christmas. It was supposed to have been done already, which would have allowed me to, and it hasn't done so. But everything, as I've learned, if I can just share humbly to everybody, everything happens for a reason. No matter how horrific things happen to you in your life, everything is happening for a reason. And believe me, my family, we've been dragged through the mud for years. And what really demonstrates to you is when you just keep getting up and you don't let it knock you down. And now that I've got this truth, look out. I just need to awake my fellow man. And that's what's required. We need to get 300 or 400 or 500, 1,000 people around, one of the news organizations and require them to report on the Mannery case. You can simply all write letters to the chief of police. How simple is that? In your local community, say, listen, go to these links that Christopher's put up. This is the case he's talking about. We need to address this. Is this true? Has a corporation been created in my name as the Registrar General of Ontario? Is she involved in human trafficking? Babies? Because that's what's going on. Like, we're not mincing the words here.
No,
this is what is going on.
Completely.
This is what's going on, and people need to wake up. Because what does this mean? Big picture? This means that to every man and woman, because you can't just tell them, they look at us, they say, oh, these are the people that don't believe in paying taxes. Okay, to those people out there, first you have to learn and understand the creation of money. And then you'll understand taxation has never applied to you, and that you've always been the creditor, and that all this money that they've taken from you, that is to come back to you. And that's the big picture I'm showing the police. That when they get this, they're going to go after this international cabal that has been stealing the money from us for this very long time, which is the Vatican, the monarch, and the central bankers. People don't realize that every single tax dollar, and I've got this from 2 verified sources, a 20-year World Bank, and also Anna Von Reitz, who's an incredible woman down in Alaska, a postal judge, retired. This woman knows the law. They know the research. They're doing the same thing that we're talking about here. She helped me immensely in stripping and understanding one simple sentence. When someone says, what is Canada? It's a company providing services to us. It's a service corporation. And that's when the light went on for me, like, oh my God, it's no different than the lawn service care corporation. They're just people acting in a role. And once you get that, you go, oh my goodness, they're supposed to, but then people go, well, it's such a big mess. How are we supposed to hold them accountable? Because we never see a judge. We never see a prime minister. Maybe down in the United States, you're seeing judges and police and politicians arrested, but you don't see any of that in Canada. When was the last politician you saw arrested here in Canada? Or a judge for that matter, or a crown attorney? I got a whole slew of them that are going to be responsible for many cases I've got doing enormous wrong and harm to elderly people. I'm putting that on the record here tonight. That's just one of my cases. Okay.
Well, and here's the thing, and this is why this roundtable was about corporatocracy, and about corporate personhood, is because that's exactly what's going on right now here in Canada. Canada is, as you say, a service corporation. The corporation known as the Government of Canada, INC, the provincial corporations known as the Province of Saskatchewan, the Province of Alberta, and the whole idea behind, I love your remedy. In getting through to getting away from the birth certificate and finding yourself as a man or a woman. But there's only going to be one final solution, and I'm not trying to take that from Mein Kampf or anything like that, but a final solution for fixing this permanently is to hold constitutional convention and seat de jure governments that actually have the ability to protect our rights. The courthouses will be public courthouses for remedy for we the people. Absolutely. And the government will be service providers. That's why they call them civil servants. They're supposed to provide us with the service. We're not supposed to kiss their ring. They're supposed to kiss ours. And for too long, for too many years now, that whole thing about government, and I always look at these judges and these police officers as, I don't know whether you ever watched South Park, and there's a little character called Cartman, and he used to ride this big, called the big wheel, the three-wheel bicycle. He had this little flashing light on it, a little siren, and he'd come screaming along and he'd say, "You respect my authority! You respect my authority!" And I always used to look at these people in that light, in that vein, because they are cartoon characters. But tonight, in order to enlighten we the people that were listening here in this audience, this is why I wanted to delve into what is a corporatocracy, what is corporate personhood, how did this come about, and why are we in this situation when it's simple to get out of, but not that simple.
Yeah, the process for our fellow band to learn it is going to be, that's the challenge. So we can just, that's why I say, I'm sorry if I'm talking again, but if that's why it's not an I love me thing, but the case, when people understand the Mannery case and what's gone on, that's the vehicle for all of us. That's the train that left the building a long time. My train left the building many years ago to move this big boulder. The Mannery was a gift from God for me. Most people wouldn't think that. People calling you up and saying to you, we're about to lose our farm, we're being destroyed. Why are these people doing to this? And then I go and see this horrific trespass that's going on against my fellow man, and these heartless people that are working for the Service Corporation of Ontario are doing this to these people. Oh, well, I have a duty to my fellow man. I don't need a badge for that.
Correct.
Right? I'm going to stand up and protect my fellow man. So I have to do it now the way, this is what I'm bred for, right? I've always been a fighter or whatever, but I had my entire life's work, taken from me, so to speak, once I realized it was never to come to fruition because I came across all this corruption. And when that happened, I guess you could kind of say it's like payback for me. It's like, really? You're going to do this? And when I found out this is happening on a grand scale to all the people in this world, it's like, okay, how do I correct that? That's a big picture that I'm talking, but it comes right down to the public courthouse. And it's everything. Everything you said, Doug, it's everything.
Well, and I'd like to bring Brenda into this conversation because I know that she has been dealing a lot with the Saskatchewan farmers and so forth. And Brenda, can you please, pick up here?
Part of what I'm trying to grasp my head on is the way the corporations, it's the land bank in Saskatchewan, and the price of land. What I'm seeing is a controlled, the government or somehow controlling the depression. It's coming, and in that, the farmers start losing their land. The prices of their equipment goes up. The small family farm is having to compete against the big corporations, and then the government is also issuing rules and regulations in order to make their life harder to live. And they're doing this all in, I believe, in the name of corporate personhood. I'm still trying to put together a storyboard to bring forth to my meeting in Waldheim on the 20th, in order to show how these entities actually work together against the individual person. And I was going to ask Christopher if I could use some of his videos from the three foundations is
Of
the three
course.
videos that I would like to use. And when I don't know something, I feel at odds. And so I keep looking and I keep searching, I keep researching. And right now I've got like 100 different dates in my head. The book was Unequal Protection, gave me lots of basics on American corporatocracy, but how does that play out in Canada? And so when you brought the tobacco industry and that up, I think that was the third thing that you were discussing.
I'll send you the article.
Yeah. How is it that we, the little person, are fighting against all these entities, and how can we maintain our livelihood? How can we maintain our families, and how can we fix this? And I know how to fix it is through the conventions, but phrasing each clause to make sure that, for instance, a corporation is exercising the rights to freedom, freedom of speech. That basically gives them a license to lie. They bring in a regulation. Industry brings in their own regulations. Well, here's another thing.
I just
yes?
want to interrupt just briefly. What Christopher was saying about how you got to find where you are as a man or a woman. All these contracts that you're talking about, these corporations bringing in and going to apply, once the farmers actually understand that they are men and women, those contracts no longer apply to them, and they can prove that they no longer apply to them. But they've got to go through a small process that I'm sure Christopher would be able to be more enlightened than I can, because he's gone through that himself with the Mannerleys, et cetera, et cetera. And Chris, I'm going to hand the mic over to Chris just for a second so that he might be able to enlarge on that for you, to give you a little more, if you don't mind, Chris.
Sure, please.
What I was hearing you speak to is, again, we're speaking about things that don't apply to you or I. So it's you have to understand when you're referring to persons and corporations. I realize this, the problem is that everybody, as I did too, you study all this information that's going on, even with whether it's within the service corporation and how all their acts and statutes and stuff are looking at. And again, by the way, look at also through any act, statutes, code, rules, or regulations, you'll never find the word man or woman. Just you know that as well. It always says persons. And the persons is the birth certificate. It's a fiction that was created when you were born. That's what all this stuff applies to. All these codes, rules, and statutes. How hard was that for me to say and for people to understand? I can say it again. We can go back and watch it again, but it's that simple. Everybody understands that nobody can create documentation with your name on it and hand it to you and say, guess what, buddy? You're bound by all my corporation's rules, codes, and services. And it would be ridiculous to say, who's this guy going around doing this? Trespassing against his fellow man. Well, that's what's happening here. Okay, and it's that simple when you realize that everything in this world has been set up as a corporation. So you have to simply understand, first correct the record when you were born in this world. Once you learn who you are, and that can only be, that's why the courthouse, when you're saying you're not seeing the solution where it is, the solution, again, with respect, is simply at the courthouse. That's where it is. Whatever you're telling me is a farmer is going through, for example, every man and woman in this country, we've had massive fraud occur against, like, think from a fraudulent perspective. If you had fraud committed against you against another man or woman, you went into court and prove it, the first thing that the court's going to do, the jury of your peers, or even in the legal world, that judge, if they're doing their job correctly, is they are going to make you whole first. So if I had $1 million stolen from me from somebody, I'm going to get that $1 million back from that person. Then what is the next phase? They would talk about punitive. Okay, you don't get to decide what punitive is. The jury decides it is. Now, you can tell the jury what all your punitive issues could be, but at the end of the day, they're going to decide what the punitive is. So the reason I'm telling you that little story is now let's move it to a big picture. Okay, once you have access to this public courthouse, you can always take in the head of any. I can bring Justin Trudeau right into the courthouse. I can get a warrant for his arrest like that. Anybody can with the evidence that we have against these people. Or Brenda Lukey, the head of the OPP, or Thomas Correct, the head of the OPP. Okay, and you understand my communications. I know these people. I've communicated. I don't know them personally, but I've never met them face to face, but I have had a lot of communications over the several years to these entities as they've changed from Bob Paulson and the OPP fiasco with Brad Blair. I've gone through that whole process with their organizations, with my writings and my communications, and I've amassed a simple evidence to show people that the truth is being willfully ignored at the highest levels, and that's unacceptable. So how do you, as people say, they look at this big thing, how are we going to lose hope? How are we going to take down this big problem that we have that's going on here in this world? Well, I'm going to walk into the public courthouse. I'm going to show you what it's like to act like a man and a woman. But I got one problem. I've been blocked by people that are supposed to be providing services. So see, remember, that's fraud. If it says it's public house, that means we the people pay for that public courthouse. Well, if it's being run as a private courthouse, everybody understands that's fraud. So we, the people, are paying judges, all these court staff, crown attorneys to commit fraud against us in our own public buildings. This is what is going on. The lawyers, again, everybody don't know. They've been indoctrinated to what a legal person is. They've never been taught law. Go look up what a lawyer learns in school. 70% of it is frickin' process. They don't really learn law, and their law is case law. Oh, I got to go back to Bob and Sally that were riding a cow farm in 1925, and he dropped his quarter on the side of the road crap, and a decision came down the railroad. I don't give a shit about that stuff. Sorry about my language, but guess what? I wasn't there. What's that got to do with me right now with the Mannery Court? These people that are acting on behalf of this service corporation are trespassing against him. They're committing fraud. They've leaned his properties up. Again, when we learn about the all caps name, you realize that the title, that's why no one owns any property in this world, and only a man or woman can own property. But how they've rigged the system up is that what identification did you use when you bought land, when you bought a car, right? When you bought these items, you used the birth certificate or your driver's license. Well, that's the corporation. It's all caps name. You never should have used that document. And I never got to say on all the shows I've done so far, I believe quickly, this is huge. We never register anything. When you register something, you're turning over control to somebody else. It's that simple. What do you do with it? You record it. You put it on the record. So what has happened when we were all born, I'll just say this lastly quickly here, Doug, I don't want to take the evening here, but when the birth certificate occurred, Okay, that is literally, it's a death certificate. They've killed the baby when they're born. They've created a legal fiction, a person, and that's all they want you to act as. And immediately when that happened, when something is incorporated, it gets dragged out to the sea. That's where the jurisdiction is. That's where corporate law is. It's under the Admiralty Maritime Law, jurisdiction of the sea. So why you record now is you record on the land. You go to the land registry office with your identification. The day the long form birth certificate, the correct ID you create. This is what we're doing now. They're doing this all in the United States, and you're recording that document on the land. Now there's the actual official record that you exist on the land as a man or a woman. You're not some physical vessel that's floating out in the sea, lost at sea, that the Queen has deemed her responsibility to look after now because, well, you didn't come back and claim it after the first 7 years when you were born.
Yeah, that's right? Sister-Kabai Act, 1666. Yes,
that's right.
The 666, 1666. You got to love that, right?
Yep.
Doesn't get any more mark of the beast than that.
Yes. So in short, it's the public courthouse, and I'm able to. You can throw anything at me. Any man or woman in this country, I don't care if you're acting in a. Remember, you talked about the Supreme Court earlier. I hammer people on the words that they use because Carl did it to me. He was a bugger. He's a tough SOB, but he really taught me to think about what I'm saying and the words that I'm using always. And it takes time. Agree. It takes time. So when you said, "Let me show you the Supreme Court of Canada," all right, I didn't see any man or woman come on here. You're pointing to words on a piece of paper. What is that? What Supreme Court of what? Remember, it's like the Supreme Court of Burger King, the Supreme Court of McDonald's. Got it? I don't care what their writings are, but I understand what you're doing. We have to understand the history of the system that's set up that's around us. But I show people, wait a minute, you don't need to pay attention to that right now. Let's just focus here on this public courthouse, because once I show you the little game that's going on here and people realize, what? We're paying for these public courthouses and we're being denied to it, all of a sudden you're going to have a police force. Do you think I'm the only guy out here that understands the fraud and corruption that's going on? Look what happened with Duke Street there a couple of weeks ago, where the man got shot 9 times on a street. There, Duke has whatever, like I said, there's an opportunity where if you have SIU that comes in and they're going to try and put something underneath the rug, there's the man that can come in, Duke, because he bared witness to it. And he can move the claim and prosecute that man or woman, not the cop, the man or woman that pulled their gun out and shot that guy if he was unarmed. Again, all of it has to come into a court of law and be brought before the people. But that's how it works. Right? You have every right to access that courthouse as any other man, and nobody can deny your right.
So the question I have, did that answer your question, Brenda? Or did we just confuse you a little bit?
Oh, no. Well, yes and no.
Any problem that you think that there is out there, Brenda, sorry, remember, there has to be a man or a woman behind it that's causing it. And that's all I'm saying to you. So if you're talking about all these rights and codes and UN things that are being written, I would say to you is, bring forward this man or woman that's writing this document, because you seem to believe that that man or woman has claimed you property, or that they have jurisdiction, control over you. It's that simple. Always require who's the man or woman that wrote this documentation. So anytime starts people reaming off acts, codes, and statutes, fine. You think it applies to me? Who's the man that wrote this act? Who wrote it? Was that a guy that works for a service corporation called Ontario? Okay. Well, obviously they must have on file a contract where I am man relinquished my rights and I've given myself to the service corporation in perpetuity for the rest of my life, right? That they can rule over me and I will abide by their codes, rules, statutes, and acts. Take that away from Ontario and put it to the lawn service guy. Imagine he came to your door and he started reaming off all these, oh, hey, buddy, your garbage can there last time we were here, we told you about that. We don't want you putting your garbage can 3 inches away from your fence. We've warned you 3 or 4 times now. Now we're going to take your property. We're going to find you. We'll see you in court next week. This is exactly what's going on in the real world, okay? The service corporation is trespassing left and right all over the people. The people don't have a clue how to defend themselves because they don't have a clue who they are. And when you know who you are, you will access that public courthouse, and no one's ever going to mess with you, love, ever again.
One more question. I have some friends that are immigrants. They've bought land here. What's their status as well on that? Is because they are a Canadian citizen, where does that fit in with the common law?
Okay, so I don't know what an immigrant is. I only know what a man or woman is, but what I believe you're speaking to me about is you're telling me that there's some people that came, my fellow man and woman born on this planet came from some other part of the world, and they now live on the land here. That's what you're telling me.
Right.
Okay, so what's the problem that they're having?
This is the key, Brenda.
Yeah.
An immigrant doesn't change their status. They're still man and woman, whether they came here yesterday or 60 years ago. They're still man and woman. The idea of an immigrant or someone who isn't naturally Canadian, that's the whole fiction of birth certificates and ownership through citizenship. That's what citizenship, it's citizenship, your little citizenship card. That's no different than the ownership to the Chevy in your driveway, Brenda. It's the government's ownership of you. Tear it up. Do away with it. These immigrants, they're not immigrants. They're newcomers. That's all. They're here. The same as you. They're a man and a woman. Only the fictitious entity we call a government refers to them as a fictitious entity called an immigrant. That is how the fictitious entity we call a government can deal with them. A fictitious entity, a pretend elf on the shelf, can't really interact with your 5-year-old grandchild, can they? They're not real. Your grandchild's real. The fictitious government can't interact with your grandchild any more than elf on a shelf can, unless your grandchild is another elf on the shelf. Then the elf on the shelf can interact with them. You see how this is what Christopher's getting at? It's what Doug has been telling us about governments. These are
here was
wheel.
Here was the thing. I've been inviting my friends, all of them, whether they are just new to Canada or not, to come to the convention table. And we have certain people that maybe don't want them there. Then we also have certain newcomers that are scared to go into this process because they feel that they will be deported. So I would like to address both those issues from a place of knowingness and not, I'll get back to you with somebody's answer.
I can answer you real quickly. That's exactly what's going to happen to them. If they start going out to these meetings that you're having, they're going to get kicked out of this country, right? Because they've breached their agreement that they came into this country because the system that is out there right now is corrupted. Our public courthouses are corrupted. So it's a no-brainer on that side of it. Now, I talk about we can't walk before we can run, right? And this is what, with respect, you're doing, is you're running before you learn how to walk. You can't be having these conventions and these hearings about constitutionalized if you've got a room full of people who don't know who the hell they are, as Doug was talking about earlier. So this isn't something that's going to take, believe me, I'm not here to talk about this for 6 or 8 months or a year, okay? It's game on right now. If you play poker, I'm all in. I went all in a very long time ago. I'm in. My life and everything is on the line now for what I'm doing here. But because I've amassed such a wealth of communications, I'm bringing it forward into the courts now, and all the police and everybody know who I am. They know that I'm not some whack job or whatever, and I've put everything honorably in front of everybody. So it's a handful of questions that have to be answered. And once that's happened, then you're going to be able to understand then these people, when they come to our country down the road, that come in here, whether you want to refer to them as immigrants, my fellow man who come into this wonderful country, they have the same rights as you or I. It boils down to, can a man or a woman administrate property of another man or woman? No, you don't have you have no right to administrate property without right. And that my flesh and blood is my property, just as that man or woman that came over from another country, that's their property. So who is Justin Trudeau to look at them? That's how you put it, writing to them in a lawful manner. Where do you get the right to administer? Where can you administrate property without right? That's a very powerful word. And when that's what I mean, you only use the word property because your rights are within property. Does your rights, anything that's exclusive to you, your hopes, your dreams, your cars, your physical objects, your property is anything that is exclusive to you. That's why if you're married, which we haven't, I don't think I've mentioned on these shows yet, but if you're married, your wife or your husband is your property. Yep. You're like, what? Well, wait a minute. Yep. That's ridiculous. But you are, because under the eyes of God, when you got married, right, you are exclusive to each other, unless in this day and time you've got some wonderful open relationship, then that's a whole other ballgame. But at the end of the day, you have a right that man or woman is your, to claim that they're your property because you're exclusive to them, just like your children are your property.
Or if you're Mormon.
Yeah. Well, again, Mormon, what's Mormon? I mean, I know I was brought up Christian, but at the end of the day, everyone's got to get out of their head. I don't care, as I said the other night, if you're native, Catholic, Jewish, I'm Christian, or brought up Christian, but what am I? I'm not a what. I'm a who. I'm not a thing, right? I'm a real entity. I am a man of flesh and blood. And all of us were given free.
Nodding right here. See that nodding going up and down?
Yeah.
Yes, Christopher's right. Listen, people.
Yeah.
Listen
and what we have
out of Christopher's mouth, because Doug is nodding up and down, going, "Yes, Christopher, you're right. You're not a who, or not a what. You're a who."
That's
right.
exactly what I'm trying to do with these meetings. Is educate people as I become educated, and come from a place of knowingness.
Yep.
That's
go to the
what
website.
We're trying to do. Yes.
Go to my website, and it's, again, this isn't an I love me thing. I'm saying this because these are facts. These are not opinions. Okay, so some people might hear me the first time and think, God, this guy's kind of a bull in a china shop. Well, guess what, people? Our frickin' fire's on house. We are all in a great deal of trouble. My fellow man has no idea. They have no idea the scale of what is surrounding us. And I'm just talking about a public courthouse to you. And I'm doing that because that is the solution for all of this other big stuff that's going on. You have to understand, and that's why we need to quit going down rabbit holes. Let's understand one thing. We got to restore a public courthouse, and we do it honorably, right? There's very few vehicles we can use. Bring the people together, like Doug said, get 300 or 400, get them around a newspaper station, contact your local police chiefs, write them a letter saying, hey, has this happened to us? Go to these 3 videos that Christopher's put up. I require, which means demand, nicely saying, I require a written response if this claim that he has made not be true. That's very powerful. And if they do not provide you with written verifiable evidence, then what I have put up there, because I said it in one of my, I believe it's the communication to the OPP and RCMP and all of law enforcement. I said, if what I've claimed here on the site is not true, will somebody please step forward? Because I'm standing out here in the light right now with the truth. And I want someone to come forward and say, no, Chris, you're delusional. You're a nut job. Here's what's actually going on here. Well, guess what, people? No one's done it since I did it on that channel, since 2015. And no one is going to come forward because everybody in this country has the evidence, and that's that birth certificate. And that's all you got to understand. That birth certificate's got nothing to do with you. It's evidence of colossal constructive fraud that's being committed. It's identity theft. And all your life you believe that document applies to you, and it doesn't. It doesn't apply to you one damn bit. It was created for you to be a trust. And like I said, go to the website, understand that core things, and by the time people do that, and if everyone will simply work with me to get the word out about the public courthouse, right, that we've lost them, that they're not public anymore, private, point them to the Mannery case, point them to my videos. I'm going to start doing some short ones soon to help people that this is where I need the help, right? This is what we need to do. And we're going to get ourselves into that public courthouse again with the police, with the media, with everybody understanding that this conversation is going to happen. And it's going to happen now, because I'm tired of all this bullshit that's been going on for years, that everybody turns a blind eye and everyone says, oh, you can never hold anybody accountable. We've gone the full scale with it with the Mannery case. Everything's in writing. Everybody can see on the record what's been said. Everybody can see what no one's responded to. And that's why you all need to understand the entire legal world is based on the rules of civil procedure. And if those don't apply to you as a man or woman, it's all over. And that's it.
So Christopher,
get me wound up.
Christopher?
Yes.
Doug, please, not Doug.
Sorry, Doug.
Thank you. And Christopher has been mentioning his website through this live stream tonight. And I have talked to Sean, and Sean will be contacting you later this week to help you in any way that you need him to help you create that website so that people can actually go see your website.
Fantastic.
But tonight, they can go to a Warrior Calls. that's plural, calls on the YouTube channel. And I put it up in the chat, and I put it up for people to go to, and that has your videos on it. But the website, ladies and gentlemen, is still not there yet. And I know that I talked to Sean earlier tonight, and he's like, wow, I got to talk to this guy. This guy sounds really cool, because he's a big guy into what you've been doing as well for years and years and years, has been studying that. So he's kind of excited to talk to you as well.
Wonderful.
And he's willing to help you in any way he can to get your website up and running. And he's a great guy. I've known Sean for over 20 years, or for almost 20 years. He's a great guy. And
thank you, Doug.
You're welcome. And tonight we've been running now for about an hour and a half. We lost Rolf, and Rant. I'm wondering if Rant is going to show up. Oh, there he is. Rolf, you're back. How wonderful.
Oh, I wanted to ask Christopher one more question.
Go for it.
Could I please put those 3 videos, the three foundations, right?
Of course, absolutely.
Could I put them on the Saskatchewan website?
They're out there in the public. I guess I'll put on that YouTube channel that's out there in the public. You take it, right? It's downloadable. You can get applications. There's lots of free apps. YouTube, that's what I teach everybody, is to go and get a free download app for the YouTube videos. And when you come across this information, download it onto your hard drive, because they're going to start stripping people away. I wouldn't be surprised if they knock my station down, in the near future. And so we have to find a way that we still keep these channels and these portholes open. And that's why the information is important. So that's what I say to everybody.
We have a Brighteon channel as well for the Myth is Canada. And you guys, Christopher, Brenda, you might want to go onto Brighteon and create your own channels up there as well.
Right.
Just so that Brighteon is the gentleman that was thrown off of YouTube for teaching people how to cure cancer. And so he created his own servers for people that literally have alternate medical stuff is initially what he did it for. But we're up on Brighteon, and people, the Myth is Canada is up there with our videos and so forth.
Sorry, Doug, is that right? Could you spell that for me, please?
BRIGHTEON.
Wasn't that Mike Adams that set that up?
That is correct. That's the doctor, Dr. Mike.
Thank you very much. I've never heard of them.
Yeah, and well, they've only been around now for about 2 years, but they are the alternate. So long as you're not putting up, like the white supremacist or the black supremacist, or the anti-Jewish stuff. Anything else is fair game. Right. And so. But we've been on, like I say, we've been on there for about a year now with our own channel. You can't stream through it yet, but I'm sure over time he'll get that done. There's also Discord, which is another alternate. They don't really stream through Discord so much as it's a chat that was designed for gamers. Right. But we've been using it. Wexit's been using it. Myth is Canada, we have our own thing up there. John was nice enough to set that up. So there's some alternate places that we can go to hold meetings and chat with like-minded individuals that we've been able to access. And I'm wondering, I'm going to ask Ed. Ed, is Derek done, and is he going to come on? I'd hope that he would come on for a few minutes anyways.
Derek
available.
Derek started on another stream around 8 o'clock, and
he's going late.
Laura Lynn Tyler and guy in Saskatchewan there is running for the PPC. Anyways, he said he would be late.
Mark Friesen.
Mark Friesen, yeah. So it's going to be heavy duty where they're going.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, I wanted to get. It's interesting because these gentlemen are from the Plaid. Derek is from the Plaid Army, and I was on with another gentleman that I'd like to introduce you to, critical thinker, Christopher. He's a really very good interviewer and has a huge following as well. And I was on with him and the two boys from the Plaid Army, and I asked Rant or Derek, if he'd like to join us tonight. And he agreed, but I guess he's busy, sadly, because that's another access point to people that don't normally, and it was new for me as well. The Plaid Army for the Myth is Canada went out through that critical thinker thing, and it was a whole brand new audience. People I had never spoken to before were now open to what the Myth is Canada is. And so I was hoping that he would, like I say, join us tonight, which brings his audience to this roundtable, and they could see you, see Brenda, Duke, et cetera, et cetera. But next time.
It's all good. Rome wasn't built in a day.
No.
Sorry, guys, I'm way behind on the chats coming through. They're just flying through, and I just can't post them quick enough.
Well, what I'm gonna do here, Ed. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground tonight, and I know Christopher was extremely generous with what he had to say, and we were pretty much. I mean, okay, I did my own little bit, but Christopher, I'm sure this audience is just blown away with the information that they've received, because it really boils down to just that, isn't it, Christopher? The birth certificate. It's right there in your hand, and hello, everybody. Time to take that and get rid of it and bring to your life the certificate of live birth and register yourself as a man or a woman on the land. Yep. It is truly that straightforward.
I would just say, don't get rid of it. You know, you don't want to get rid of it. Okay. It's evidence, right? Remember, it's like someone came into your house and beat you up with a hammer, and they left their hammer there with your blood on it and their fingerprints and everything. Yeah. Why would you want to get rid of that? No. I want to know what that birth certificate is about. You did what to me when I was a child, as a baby? Really? And what have you been doing all these years to all of my fellow man? Oh, really?
Evidence.
That's the discussion we have to have, because that leads everybody right to the courthouse and right to the Brent Mannery case. So that's simple. It's a very quick process.
Go ahead, Rolf.
Christopher, what happens if you're born in Germany like I was, and I got myself a citizenship paper when I was about 16 years old through my parents?
Well, you're a man or a woman that has been living in this country on the land for how many years now?
Over 50.
This is your home. And okay. There's that word that keeps coming up there, is citizenship. See, these masterful people, they're laughing their asses off at us. Pardon again for my language, but they're brilliant when you understand the level at which they have manipulated the mind of man. Citizen what? Ship. Admiralty Maritime, you're out in the water. And for those people that don't, you start to connect the dots and you go, oh my goodness, right? What does the river flow through, right? It through the banks, take care of the current sea, the banks, right? And when you're born, you give birth, right? Your mother births. And where does that happen? At a dock, where a ship docks, it gives birth, right?
Through a birth canal.
Yeah, so you start to see all these parallels and how they created this system in a sublime way, in which I guess it's their comedic version of laughing at mankind, because we're all too stupid to understand what they do. So again, when you start talking in those frames, it really messes people up. That's why I drop right back to, see that birth certificate? Let's talk about you for a second. This is what was done to you when you were born. And people, once they start to see this, they're going to go, what? You see, because that's why I say the infrastructure is already in place. So just, the brain's always churling as all you guys are talking here tonight. You people, out of respect for Don Cherry, love him. You people here tonight that are all talking, because that's what you all are. You're the people, we the people. You're speaking. You're looking for the solution within a construct for a constitution to be formed. Well, guess what? We've already got the vehicle to do that quickly, right? Through the systems, the media, the political elections and everything that we have. What has to happen is that everybody that's working in these capacities throughout the chain within the system around, their consciousness just has to be reset. And they learn about the birth certificate. And then we believe as the duty, everything that I'm doing to make this world a better place, they're going to step up to the line too, because there are great people that are working. Your neighbors are all great people, and a lot of them work in government. And if you give them the opportunity to do something great, and they see what it's done to their fellow man, and then they really wrap their head about how big this is for our country and our world, it's game over. Now, what did I say there that is a terrorist threat, right? See, this is why they can't come after me and what I'm doing, because I'm simply speaking the truth. Right? And the truth is beautiful. I love it. All you got to do is you got to let the truth let it free, and it's going to take care of everything else. So where am I doing it? I'm doing it very strategically now, right? The truth is being released on a public courthouse. It's being released on one case. People need to understand the unlawful conversion with the birth certificate. I can wrap that up in an hour every night for people if I have to. And once the mainstream media, if one newspaper will cover this, and if they won't, that's when we get the people. But as soon as the masses hear about it, that's when that claim is going to go back into the court, and then the fun begins. Because I'm going to bring in cameras, because remember, it's a public courthouse. It's my dance hall. When I walk into that courtroom, I'm holding court. So I'm going to stream that court live to the entire world or to the entire country. I'm going to bring the people that I met through my venture with doing this global launch of my initiative that I talked about that was my life's work. I have a very deep background technology understanding it as well. I've got some incredible friends that work at Cisco, and I'll bring in an incredible system that everyone can come in with your phones, and you'll all stream it live so that the entire country sees what is going on in the public courthouse. That is how we educate one another. We educate through experience. I'm by no means perfect. Have I done that before? No, but I know that once I get in front of a jury of my peers, that's my court that I'm holding. That's the Mannery Court. I'm down on the paperwork that's filed as a co-prosecutor because I have a duty to protect my fellow man. And Brent and Kathy are not competent in understanding how to access this courthouse and all the stuff's going around them, but I have a duty to protect them. That's why I stood shoulder to shoulder with them. And that's why I'm doing this. And when that happens and people see me present that case, that's your case, that's your property, you can present it any way you want to that jury of your peers. Not a man or woman wearing a robe, because they're not sitting high up above anymore. They're off to the side with the court reporter and the court stenographer, right? And then the bailiff's over here because they are simply bearing witness. That's why we require these honorable people to provide the good faith services in which you're being paid to do, to stand there in that public courtroom and bear witness that what is transpiring in front of you is being handled and processed correctly, lawfully, openly, transparently. There's no shenanigans. And when everybody sees this happen once, not the bullshit that's happening on TV you see every night, not the bullshit that's happening in every courthouse today across our country and around our world. Once you see it, a courthouse truly accessed correctly the first time, that's what my fellow man and woman needs to see. And through that, Brent and Kathy, it's not just about them saving their home and their livelihood. This is going to cause a hard reset that's going to be a ripple effect, not just across Canada, right around this world. Because what I'm speaking to you about is happening in Ireland, it's happening in England, it's happening in Australia, it's happening in all over the world. People are the same system, the same structure, and how it has attacked us moments from when we were born was created by the Vatican. It came from Rome a long time ago. And it's only a handful of players who have carried this whole system forward since. So you don't need to understand history with Rome and the Vatican. I'm here in the now with you. Understand that public courthouse. Understand what's been done to you. Fraud's been committed against you from the moment you were born. And every man and woman that you know and love in this world, it's happened to them too. And don't forget about all the people that fought through the First and Second World Wars that had nothing to do. They fought for what they believed was our freedom. So the least we can do is honor them by that. And this is how we honor them. You don't turn, you stand on your heels, and you look at your fellow man eye to eye and say, who is claiming that I'm property? Who's in this courtroom that claims that I've done wrong or harm? And no one's going to come forward 99% of the time in their system. But if you have done wrong or harm, as I said the other night, I'll be there in that courtroom making that Crown Attorney lunch every day to see that he nails your ass to a wall. Because I'm not going to tolerate it. And neither does our fellow man. It's that simple. If you cause no wrong or harm, we're done. Right? There's no reason for you to go to that public courthouse unless there's a man standing there saying, hey, that guy over there, Christopher, he did that to me, right? And if that's not if there's not a man there at the courthouse that's saying that, not some guy that works for the Service Corporation, there's no court. It's that simple. So I'm sorry, I could talk for hours. I keep going. Sorry, Doug. But
that's okay. Rolf, was he able to answer your question? And if not, do you have further that you would like to get more verification?
I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Yeah, the second part of that was, how do you handle the corruption with the prosecutors and the judges when they just run roughshod over you?
Right there, real simple. What are the three words you just said?
Judge, prosecutor, right?
Yeah, what's the word I didn't hear?
Man or woman?
Exactly. So I don't know what you're talking about. As I teach everyone, you can't sue a fiction. So if you're telling me how do you hold these people accountable, well, you file a claim. Like, for example, Linda C. Templeton. She's the regional chief justice, right, for the Superior Courts out of London. She's the for that region. Well, this woman believes that the St. Thomas courthouse is her private courthouse, her public courthouse, that woman can block another man or woman from accessing it. So I simply put to her, when she removed Brent's property from that courthouse, I didn't need to go into their rules of civil procedure and all the stuff she's throwing back at me, trying to contract with me. So you let her know I'm not contracting. They don't know who you are, Linda. I don't know what this gobbledygook is that you're talking about, but excuse me, where did you get the right to take my property out of this public courthouse? She can't answer that, because the only way she can do that is if Brent was her property, or if Brent has a contract with her that allows her to administrate property without right. So to your question, you can't hold a judge accountable. You can't hold a police man accountable, or police chief, or whatever designation, a doctor, whatever, a prime minister. They're fictions. But you can hold the man or woman accountable in court, because when you take them into court, if they're doing something through you or to you under the color of law, like through codes, rules, or statutes, they've got to show where you signed on to their service corporation to accept any of those benefits and privileges, what they tell you that you're so welcome to, that they provide for us. These are the benefits and privileges that you're getting, people. How do you like it? We're going to steal your identity. We're going to steal money from you your whole life. And if we, God forbid, get the luck of the draw to get you into court through family court or criminal court or any other little rig casino we've set up, we are going to have a field day with you. We're going to take every single penny from you. You know why? Because you're all ignorant. You're all too lazy, all those before you. None of you bother to learn who you are, and we are laughing our asses off at you. Well, guess what? The gig's up, because we've got the internet now, and the world has finally come together, and this truth is out. And I'm just one of the few. I'm one of the first of millions that are going to start coming forward. And I believe everybody on this call here tonight that's witnessing it, that's listening, everyone that's also on the panel here tonight, you are all going to be lights for this world. And it's that simple.
And you use private prosecutions as the tool?
Yeah. They call it private prosecution in their world. So I say, okay, fine. See, you don't want to go to the courthouse, and you don't want to cause any conflict or extra additional work for the court staff. You're there to work with them. So I'm just the kind of guy, I'm able to drill down on a solution. I say, okay, fine. Let me read, like the history side that you guys do. Well, let me read what you guys do, how it works in the service, how the process is supposed to work on the private prosecution side under a legal proceeding. Remember, is it a legal proceeding or a lawful proceeding? You know the difference between legal and lawful, right?
Oh, yeah.
Legal is that which is incorporated. Lawful is unincorporated. How simple is that? So you walk into court, is this a legal proceeding? Oh, well, it's got nothing to do with me. I'm the man here. Where's the living man here that's coming forward with a verified claim? Anyways, but that's how it works. It's that simple to prosecute these people. You go after the man or the woman in the courthouse. And the private prosecution, I've showed the courthouse now. The judge ran from the court. He ran from the court last time. It's all on record. And I went right after the Chief Justice. I've got this is all going to come up on the website. It's all recorded. You're going to hear the phone calls that were made, right? I've got these people nailed to the corner, nailed to a wall, and they're not responding. So you look up what a tacit agreement means, okay? For your viewers, I'm not going to that's the problem too, if I can rant for just one more second here. That's the problem with our society, is that everybody wants everything handed to them. They don't want to get off their ass and actually go and educate themselves. They want it at the push of a button. Or is there a form that I can get here that, I can just put my name on the bottom of it and I'm free? Doesn't work that way, people. You got to understand what is going on. And we've allowed this incorrect placement of our trust in the system, in these creating positions such as crown attorneys, police, not the people. They're not bad. They've been corrupted just as us. That's how you have to speak with them. And if they're going to refuse to do what they're required to do, then that's why that public courthouse is so powerful, because you drag that police officer in, even if he pulls you over for a traffic ticket. I'll tell everyone this one too, that's a real gem. I know I jump all over the place. You don't need a driver's license, as anyone that has done the history knows. When you're free, you're able to access the public roads. But what you can take with you in the system right now, go and get your passport. Go and open the passport, even though it's got that all caps name. Go and get the passport, open it up, and look on the inside of that first page, and you read what it says. It says the bearer of this document, and this is the Queen. Remember, all of these parasites that are working for these service corporations have pledged an oath to this wonderful old woman called the Queen. Okay, I'll play your game. Read what it says, that they are not to hinder or obstruct and let the bearer of this passport travel freely. And they're there to assist should the bearer require it. It's something, I didn't quote it correctly, but read it. It's so if you get pulled over, you're never operating under a license at that time. You're simply accessing a public road, and you're going from point A to point B in what? Your property, and you hand that man the ID that you're presenting to him, the passport, and you point to, you read that. He's bound by that woman, the queen. He pledged an oath to her, and she's putting it right in writing to him. Don't you dare stop or prevent or hinder this man from traveling. He is to be let alone. That's what it's basically telling the public servants that are acting as crown agents. Very powerful. The guy I'll also tell you to look up is David Straight. David Straight out of the U.S. You want to talk about balls? Yeah. You want to talk about kahunas? This man, oh, I love him. I'm going to meet him soon. I love him to death. And there's someone that you can learn a lot from as well. But well, again,
Christopher, technically with a passport, I could just pull the license plate off the back of my vehicle.
Yeah, you could. But you know what happens then is that you attract the attention to you that you don't have plates on your vehicle, and then you get into a whole cluster, you know what, at the side of the road with the cop, because he's just as ignorant. He's going, look, buddy, you can't drive around with no plates. You get into that conversation. So my position is leave the plates on there because it's got the Queen's crown on it, and you're handing them the passport that is the Queen herself telling them, don't you dare trespass across against your fellow man or woman. Read it. It's very powerful, and stand on that.
So let's look at this in an actual application. I really want us to get back to corporate personhood, which is how we started tonight out. But Rolf, let's just take a minute and look at a hypothetical situation. Use myself as an example. I decide to take Christopher's lead. I go to a public notary. I have my name set as Duke of the family Willis, or use my middle name, Duke Albert, and drop Willis altogether. I know it's there. I don't give a damn if the corporation called Canada knows it's there. I know it's there. That's all that matters to me. So let's assume I go and establish myself as a free man. I send notification of that with all the identification to the OPP, the Ministry of Transport, the Ontario Ministry of Transport, all the necessary people, and tell them, I'm not party to your system. This plastic applies to the fiction of me. It doesn't apply to me, the man. There's your fiction. There's who I am. The license plate that you see on the back of my car, I'm not paying for because I don't need to. I'm not bound by your regulations. I leave it on the back of my car so that all the plebes, and I don't use that word to sound demeaning. That's Greek. It means the people, okay? All the plebes will see a license plate on the back of my car and think I am the same as them, when in reality, that license plate means nothing to me, Duke Albert. It only means something to other people, and that's why I would leave it there. And when I get pulled over and the police walk up and say, hey, your plate's not valid, I hold up my paperwork that says I'm not part of your system. I'm Duke Albert. Here's stuff that says I used to be, and I'm just doing what I'm doing in order to pacify you and the rest of the plebes. It's not a legal requirement of me. I'm merely perpetuating your facade. Leave me alone and let me be.
Hey, Duke, here comes the tow truck.
No. Well, they can take it, but then they're going to face repercussions because guess what? I get to determine what my time and my property is worth. And if they interfere in me or my property, I get to determine that, hey, you just cost me $10 million for 2 hours of impounding my car, and I am going to sue you in common law court. As Christopher would tell you, that's what you do.
But you wouldn't sell them. You wouldn't sue them, Duke. If I can just pop in for $10 million.
Yeah.
Remember what I said? You can only claim wherever the damage and wrong was harm. Now, if you've been put out and there's been some emotional trauma that's caused you, well, that's for the jury to decide, not you.
Right.
We, the people, don't decide it. So it's important people understand that. Like, we could do a symbol show just on traffic, because it's very, very important. But for everyone out there, simply, all you say when you hand him that passport is you say good day, so he knows who he's dealing with. You have your correct ID. You say, I'm not operating under a license this time. That's it.
That's it.
That's all you have to say to him.
Guys, if I can interrupt here for a second. The chat's getting a bit out of hand. People try to be respectful. All the guests come in here. Nobody's getting paid for this. This is all volunteers. And if you can, you can absorb the information. You can use it if you want to. You can learn if you want to, or you can ignore it if you want to. And we've actually got another lady here who would like to step up.
Anyways, I'm not done. Not done. Shut the fuck up.
Anyways, to be continued, guys. I just hate it. People do all this for free, and you get people fighting inside the chat. We've got a country to save. We got our own lives to save. We got to bring freedom back to this country. Try to stay focused, people in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, they need to understand, that's a hot topic with this whole Freeman movement, right? Is the traffic ticket or taxation. So I say to people, listen, are you not a man or a woman born free in this world? And they all say, well, yes. Well, I believe in you. Like, you do need to get trained to go out on the, to drive a vehicle, because this is the bottom line in common law. When you access the public road, if you cause any wrong or harm, that's all it is out there. If you cause it out there, you're going to be held liable. It's that simple. So, I want people to carry themselves appropriately. You don't drive around 1,000 miles an hour. You don't ignore and cause wrong and harm. People need to understand that, right? We're not talking about, if you don't have a driver's license, then I'm just going out doing whatever the hell I want on the roads. No, you're not, right? You're acting respectfully and honorably to your fellow man. Now, people that are operating in a commercial capacity, who we require to have a license for, I'm meaning a truck driver, like these guys driving the big transports, a bus driver that's taking our children or people, passengers around, anything that is involving the public and commerce on the public highways and these big vehicles, yes, like machinery. You want people to be trained in that. There's nothing wrong with that, but an actual license for you to go from point A to point B in your property on a public, see, that word comes up. Are they private roads or public roads? Well, if they're public, then you have a right to go on it. And if someone's saying that you can't do X, Y, and Z on it, can you please bring this man or woman forward? Because they must, whoever's claiming this, because you're pointing to this paperwork, you didn't write it. Did you, Bob or Susie? Wearing the badge at the side of the road? No. Well, then who wrote these codes and statutes and acts, the Highway Traffic Act that you're trying to apply to me, right? I have nothing to do with this service, this man who wrote this, or people. One of them would have to come forward and say, oh, wait a minute, Christopher there is my property. Oh, okay, well, then that stuff would apply. Or we've got a contract here Christopher signed, and they try and use it against you. Well, the contract that you signed is your signature that you put on that driver's, identification that they
I never saw any contract.
That's not a contract. There was no meeting of the minds. There was no complete full disclosure. And again, the name that's on that entity does not represent you as the man. Okay, it's something other. So again, that's part of full disclosure. And if full disclosure is not given, a contract's not valid.
Doug, can you, Doug, clarify the terms and conditions required to reach a valid contract?
Well, under the common law, there are four elements of understanding a valid contract. The first one is A, you have to be presented. B, you have to have read it. 3, you have to have understood it. And then D, you have to have signed it. There has to be a wedding signature upon it. And it has to be between two parties, not one party. You can't have a contract with the state. The state has to be another man or a woman. And the state is not. The state is a legal fiction. And hence, how do you have a contract with a legal fiction? You can't, because they can't countersign. It's how when I was teaching people about mortgages and how the bank actually creates the money from your signature and then loans it to you at interest. And if you look at the promissory note because there's the mortgage and then there's the promissory note. So the last page of the mortgage, they want you to sign, and then they flip over, and then there's the promissory note. And the promissory note is a common law document. And what's interesting about a promissory note is that on the left side, the lender signs, and on the right side, the borrower signs. Now, if you go and look at your mortgage today, if you've got a copy of it at home, you'll notice that you signed on the left side. Well, wait a minute. That makes you the borrower, the lender. Wait a minute. I borrowed the money. No, you created the money by signing on the left side. They put it into your bank account through a little trick called, oh God, I can't remember now. But on this other topic.
Securitization.
No, it's a bookkeeping trick. And basically all they do is type into the computer that puts the funds into your account off of your signature. Okay, the funds are created from thin air. It's a fiat currency, and hence now you're charged interest for the next 30 years that you have to repay it back. Now, is that a legal contract? No, it's not. They were supposed to loan you money, but they didn't. And so I helped a friend of mine in a court in the States where that was brought to the court's attention, and the judge actually ruled in his favor and told the bank that they didn't have the right to foreclose on him because he bought the house with his own money. They didn't loan him anything. And he walked out of court. I'm not kidding. He walked out of the courtroom free and clear. But at the end of the day, if there but for the grace of God go us with our lack of knowledge. And it doesn't take much to learn a little bit. If you go, I used to buy and sell houses in my younger days, and I would sit in my lawyer's office because we do the closings and stuff like that, and I'd read every single contract. I made sure that when we signed our mortgages that I signed on the right-hand side and the banker signed on the left. I used to read the mortgages at the bank. And I would make changes that I didn't feel were appropriate within the mortgage because they're 100% negotiable. Don't forget, this is a contract. All contracts are 100% negotiable until you sign it. And if you don't have a wet ink signature on the other side of the contract, maybe it's the CEO of the corporation that signs on behalf of the corporation. Hence, you can enter into a contract that way, absolutely. Or you're just entering into another contract with the man or woman. Bankers are corporations, so they have contracts, and your mortgage is a contract. They have to sign the mortgage as the lender. And if you allow them to let you sign the mortgage as the lender, then you might as well drop the trowel, pull your stuff down, and pull your cheeks apart and let them do what they want to you, because that's exactly what's happening. And they're stealing your labor yet again. Do we get this, ladies and gentlemen? Your labor is your property. It's an unalienable right. It is yours because you are a finite being. And the only thing that puts the roof over your head and the food on your table is your labor. We have to stop this, and we need to stop it now. And with what Christopher has been talking about tonight with the courts and the public and the private, and what we've been talking about, corporatocracy, and the way that they get around entering into legal and lawful contracts with you through assumptive contracts. Oh, well, that's the Ontario Highway Act, and you applied for a driver's license, so it's assumed you've read the contract and you signed the contract. Really? Well, that's news to me. I know about the Ontario Highway Act, but I didn't realize that I was signing a contract. Well, guess what? You owe us $300 because you parked incorrectly. What? But there you go, folks. There you go. Now I'm going to shut up. Go ahead, Duke. Ralph, Brenda, Christopher.
Well, I've had one thing rolling over in my head all night long, and it's all based on one word that I keep hearing from everybody here at the table tonight, and I keep seeing it. I've got my YouTube and Facebook, my personal Facebook and YouTube channels open, and I'm watching the chat in there, and I've probably seen this word and heard it. easily a dozen times tonight. And it's a very simple, short, little 5-letter word. And I know a lot of you out there are going to look at me and say, oh, Duke, it's got nothing to do with religion. But if you open up a very well-known, very old book that we all know about, repeatedly in that book, it tells you the truth will set you free. 5 little letters, T-R-U-T-H. Christopher is telling you the truth will set you free. Doug has been telling you that for a long time. I keep telling it to you. Tonight, you've been hearing it. Christopher is telling you, stop playing in the fictional make-believe world of the corporations. Live in the truth. You are the truth. And you, through truth, will set yourself and the rest of us free. It really is that. It's that simple, isn't it, Christopher? It's just
that's beautifully said, Duke. That's beautifully said. Thank you for that. And I know that I'll let Christopher go ahead.
No, it is
You
that
can
simple.
improve on it. Yeah.
No, it's again, it's just the truth that we're bringing forward here. We're bringing love back into this world very powerfully. That's what I'm ultimately doing through. This is all based on love, from what's happened to me in my life and why I'm here right now, and I'm all in. And it is so simple to turn this world around. And so for me, the challenge has been to understand how to bring the truth simply forward to everybody. I'm by no means perfect. Do I have all the answers? No, but I don't need all the answers. I've got the answers that were given to me at this time, right now. And it's simple for everybody to understand. So it's a very exciting time in our world. It's also a very dangerous time in our world. And they've got so many, they can pull the plug anytime financially. There's so many things that are going on. And that's why we've got to drill down. And if everybody can just understand what's going on when you're born, everyone says, well, this has got to stop. As soon as they stop that, then everybody will automatically recognize when you look at all the ID that you're given, right? Look at everything you've got, your bank cards, everything. Your name is in all capital letters, but it's in different configurations. Every one of those different configurations is a different corporation they created, and it has a different CUSIP number attached to it. There are multiple of you out there in this fraudulent system, right? And that's putting it very simple for people to understand. Someone went and created multiple corporations without your knowledge, and all of those corporations are being funded in the background, and you're not told how all the system's working. Well, and that's why
I'm going to interrupt you here a little, because we're going to do another roundtable. I want to host another roundtable about what the difference between fiat currency and how it's created, and what is species money. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will be coming to a roundtable event in the not too distant future. And I think maybe Christopher might want to join us on that one, because I'll tell you what he just talked about. That's how fiat currency is created. I'm sure you'd love to explain.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's there's so many. It really is fascinating. When the horrific side of this, it's also incredible what you see mankind has been put through since we've all been born in this world. It's so massive, and the evil that is causing and creating and doing all this stuff against us. When I first heard this stuff, everyone's got to know this. I thought, this is ridiculous. This is a bunch of crap. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What's going on, right? And it took me many years. Like I said, I ain't the sharpest marble in the bowl. But at the end of the day, it finally came through to me, and I guess this is the time it was supposed to. And I'm not alone. Like I said, great people around the world, and we're going to get this done. But we've got to drill down on the birth certificate, and that's what I really want to do. Focus on and to get the court up. That's the most important thing. So I have a duty to everybody to get this right. That's why everything that I say has to be correct. I cannot be wrong, and that's why it will register with everybody. Hey, what this guy just said to me is true. You're going to know it in your heart. You're going to say, well, he's absolutely right what he just said. So why is what he said is truth is not being represented in the courthouse or whatever situation we're talking about. And the truth, once you're able to use the correct words and understand what's going on, it's so simple. Get me anybody across this country and I'll make mincemeat of them in 5 seconds in a court.
Well, and with that being said, we're looking at 2.5 hours we've done here on the roundtable tonight.
That's good.
And I think we're going to call it a night, and I'm going to get everybody here to say one last thing and a little good night to the audience. And we'll start with Duke, and then we'll move to Christopher, Ralph, and then go to Brenda. So why don't we try that? Duke, go for it.
Okay, well, as much as I'd like to spend a long time saying good night and thanking everybody for being here tonight, I want to close out with a question to Brenda and Rolf. Brenda, I know you've watched back in December when Christopher first came on my show. I know you're working very closely with Doug. Rolf, I admit I'm not very familiar or up to date on what you're doing. So I'm going to focus this sort of generally at both of you. Do the two of you envision or visualize putting to work on an individual basis the information that Christopher is bringing? Do you see a ways and means of using this information to facilitate, enhance what you're already doing with constitutional meetings? Brenda?
Okay. I just interject here just briefly. I already had talked with Brenda and Rolf about her doing her meetings and bringing Christopher on as a live stream that they would contact after the show and possibly get that set up for that. So I don't mean to answer the question for you, Duke, but I'm going to go ahead, Brenda.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yes, I've been wanting to incorporate this for a long time. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. And I thank you very much for introducing me to Christopher, because I had no idea what his last name was or who to even reach out to. So thank you very much.
And Rolf, do you see a way of implementing this information?
Well, to be honest with you, I've in the last 12 months, I've been to the courts 15 times over traffic and criminal matter. I refused to blow and I wouldn't identify myself. And I've tried every trick in the book from 4 or 5, 6 different gurus that are familiar with the process, procedure, and so on and so forth. And I've attempted subrogation, a natural person, private person, and the courts and the judges just pretend they have no clue what subrogation is, or they run roughshod, move right forward, establish a date. For instance, tomorrow morning, I'm supposed to be on my 16th appearance in provincial court on these matters. And because of what I learned from Christopher in the last couple of days, a friend of mine will be appearing on my behalf and basically tell the courts that I'm sicker than a dog and I can't appear. When I plan on filing these documents shortly thereafter, we'll see what happens.
Okay, cool. All right, I am going to sign out, gentlemen. I'm going to go back over and finish the broadcast on my own show. Doug, I want to thank you for inviting me in and having me as part of tonight's roundtable. Christopher, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doug.
You started out this weekend as doing an hour on my show Friday, and here you are, your 3rd night in a row doing live streams. You've been a busy man this weekend, sir. Thank you for your time. All of us appreciate it. And I mean all the people in my chat room and all the chat rooms watching this. We appreciate your work and your time and effort, especially this weekend. Doug, as always, thank you. Rolf, take care, buddy. You can always reach reach me at dukewillis@gmail.com, and that goes for anyone watching this show. If you want to get a hold of Christopher, I know he's hard to reach out to me at dukewillis@gmail.com, and I will put you through to Christopher. His schedule is very, very busy, so it may take a while, but I am a good source. Or Doug at Nephilim Films. You can reach out to Nephilim Films and get a hold of Christopher that way. Right now, folks, I'm going to say goodnight and pop back over and deal with all the people on my own show that's going on still. Thank you so much.
Good night, Duke.
Thanks,
Thanks, Duke.
guys.
Good night, Duke.
Have a good night, Duke.
But you're going to miss this great song we're going to play.
Hang on. Just
Hang on for a minute.
just-
I want to
just a
thank
minute.
Christopher as well. Christopher, thank you very much for appearing, and the last couple of days have been very helpful. Doug, thanks for inviting me tonight, and Ed for helping out technically. It was great. I feel comfortable with this program now, so yeah, I like it.
I look forward to having you on another round table or 2 or 3 as
Absolutely.
the year progresses. Be delighted. And thank you for coming. And I'm going to let's let Ed play this song.
Yeah.
And
I
then
can still
Christopher and I'll
those times.
say our good nights after.
Whiskey drinks came without limes, and no one cared about calories in beer. Now there's skinny jeans and hair salons, and football hits are frowned upon. Tobacco is a bad curse, but not carrying a man purse. I can remember days
gotta mute
gone
your
by
mics, please.
when blue jeans had no button fly, and men were men and full of pride before the manhood died. So bye-bye to the American guy. Trade your Chevy for a Prius. Change your white bread to rye. Those hunting rifles are illegal to buy, and now everyone
Dude,
gets
please,
trophies who
mute your
try. 'Cause keeping score might make someone cry. Now pedicures and latte blends have replaced playing poker with your friends. That's not how it used to be. And for many years Old Spice held the throne, and now it's Justin Bieber cologne. And women weren't in the combat zone. I'm afraid that manhood has died. So we keep singing bye-bye to the American guy. Trash your old zipper Levi's and get some button flies. Take your truck and SUV and just kiss them goodbye. Singing this'll be the day manhood died. This'll be the day manhood died.
Thank you, Ed. That was wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher, would you like to say your good nights, please? Thank you. Gotta unmute your mic.
Oh, yeah, that helps, doesn't it? I would just like to say thank you for having me on this evening, Doug, and it was a pleasure to meet and be able to speak with my fellow man here on some very important topics. One thing I just wish to say is I got to kind of correct what Duke was saying there. Please don't contact Duke. If you want to get a hold of me, you have to understand something. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people across this country that are fighting in the courts right now that are being screwed over, and I'm just one guy. I'm very close right now to getting this court case. Like I said, I believe in the next couple of months here, we're going to get the proper movement and exposure on it. Once that goes back into the courthouse, that's going to be able to help everybody, no matter what your situation is. But my website, I keep saying website, and I apologize, the YouTube channel, until the website's up, but the YouTube channel has got information there right now for you to learn. Please go there, and you've got to understand the basics first, and that will help you. There is a community out there of people you can speak with, but you've got to do your research, and you've got to put a little time into it. And I've, as Anna von Reitz likes to say, or David Straight, I basically put everything on, I've written it on the back of the napkin to keep it real simple. So first start from a place of love and know that you've been lied to, and know that there is an enormous amount of hope and truth that's coming forward now in this world. This isn't wishy-washy shit. This is the real deal. This is time to man up, okay? Especially our police forces. So thank you very much, Doug. And this is all it's about. It's about engaging, having a conversation. There's no violence in any of all this stuff. It's the truth. And sometimes the truth is the hardest thing for people to face. They don't want to face it, but the truth is the truth. So you know what? That's whether you like it or not, it's coming, and it is going to save and change our world. So good night.
Thank you for being here and taking the time, and it's been very generous of you to spend the time here with our audience tonight. And I'll be delighted to have you back for another roundtable at some point in the near future.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
And I'm going to let Brenda would like to say good night.
I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you very much, Christopher. You're enlightening, your truth. I must say, I was one of those people that thought it was a tinfoil hat thing. I always, somebody mentioned a birth certificate. Do you know about? Oh yeah. I know that story, but part of it was because I wasn't prepared to understand. The other part was I was still grasping with the concept. And so when I'm still grasping with something, I can't teach it. Yes. But I'm no longer grasping. I understand. I just simple. Don't have the words yet. And you'll get them. So that's why I'm asking, can I please use what?
Of course, everything's there. You can, all my stuff is public. All the writings that will go up on the website will be downloadable. There's no charges or anything. This has never been about money for me. I do believe and feel that the people will rally around me once this gets up and around, that funding will come my way because I need it. I mean, I've had no income, so people know really for 20 years now I've been destroyed. Right. But the money that does come in through donations, I'm also I shall tell everyone here now, give you a little bit of a thing, is I'm going to upload some of my music. My background's in the music and entertainment industry. That was my passion for it's still my passion to this day, but my life's work got ripped away from me 20 years ago. So I've got a bunch of music that people have never heard, that soundtrack stuff that I think is beautiful. And it's my way of kind of putting that up there to say, hey, you know what? I don't want to get any money for this stuff here because we should be having this conversation anyway. But if you love enough what I've done, and I saved you a $500 bill with a lawyer now, and you understand how we can start to, like I say, once the single court gets changed, all of this stuff stops. No one needs to learn how to write anything because we're going to have the hard reset. But that's why we have all this conflict going on right now in the courts. And it's going to be it's wonderful once the website. I cannot thank you enough, Doug. Sorry, I cut into you saying good night, but thank you. And please, everyone, quit thanking me. Okay, I realize it's a thing to do, but we got to get past this thanking stuff here because I'm doing exactly what you guys are doing, right? And I'm just grateful that we're all here. So, that's all that matters.
Well, and I thank you for showing up. That's why I'm thanking you. I'm thanking you for your information and for your research, the same way people thank me for showing up and divulging my research. And once again, the Myth is Canada, we don't charge for the information. It's there on the website. We've set up the timeline. I put up the documentation for people to download in PDF format, and it's easy to read. Well, some of it's easy to read, but it's there. And like you, we work off of donations, and we're not in this to make money. We're in this to bring the message to we the people, so that we the people can make the changes that we need to have in our lives. And it's not just for us, but it's for our children and our children's children's children. Because if we don't do it now, then we're going to enslave the kids and the grandkids. Exactly. And so we need to stop it. And this is my contribution, and as is your contribution, and for the listening audience tonight, their contribution for just being here and learning about this and taking this out and telling two friends who will tell two friends who will tell two friends. And thank you all for showing up and being here tonight for this roundtable event. And we will be having another one in a couple of weeks. I'm thinking good topics would be rights versus privileges.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens in 2 weeks. And thank you, Mr. Ed Jamnesk, for also being the moderator on this again.
Yes, thank you
Ed
very much.
Is an amazing guy.
Thank you.
And
very
yes,
much.
He's still learning the software, but it's getting much better. And We look forward to the next one, Ed, and the next one, and the next one. And this year is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
I think, anyways, because with teaching the people, there's nothing more heartwarming than actually having people learn what we are teaching them. And they then take that information and teach others. And we instead of us being just the singular messengers, we've now created 10,000 or 100,000 messengers. At that point, they can't stop us. They can attack a single messenger, but they can't attack 100,000 messengers, especially with the truth as the message.
I agree.
That's it. From me, from Brenda and Rolf and Duke and Christopher, thank you very much, everybody.
Everybody.
Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.